to the Take Your Power Back show with Peak Performance Breakthrough Coach Kim Yater. Today's empowering program will encourage you to step into your power, to take action in your leadership, and allow your voice to be heard. Listen in today as we speak to other freedom-loving Americans that are making a positive impact in the world by standing in truth amid adversity. Learn how to take your power back in your freedom, in your personal and professional life, in technology and creativity, and in your faith. Be inspired, be encouraged, be transformed. Together, let's take your power back with our host, Peak Performance Breakthrough Coach, Kim Yater.
Well, hello, my freedom-loving patriots. Welcome to the Take Your Power Back show. I'm your host, Kim Yater. Today, we are cranking up the heat for round 2 of the California Governor Face-Off. So get ready. The voice of we the people is being ignited, and we are shaking up the foundations of the status quo. So let's dive on in. Patriots, we are coming off the explosive round 1 of the California Governor Face-Off, where Sheriff Chad Bianco, Leo Zaki, and Leo Naranjo shook the state with their bold visions. That show created a massive stir. Word on the street is, after 27 interviews that Sheriff Chad Bianco has done, some hitting 1 million views, Sheriff Bianco made headlines with MSN covering his controversial interview, proving our platform is waking up California. Our good friend and fearless leader, warrior, General Flynn says, we are the digital warriors. So thank you to all of our warriors that are live streaming the show today. Now, with President Trump back in the White House, we Republicans have a historic chance to take our power back, not just in DC, but right here in the golden state of California. Tonight, we're diving into round 2 of the California Governor Face-Off, featuring exclusive one-on-one interviews with Steve Hilton, Daniel Mercury, and Kobe Markham. Expect hard-hitting questions and unfiltered insights into their bold plans to restore California's greatness. So grab your faith, your courage, and your patriotic fire. Let's take our power back together. First up today on the hot seat, and let me just tell you, I was just on the line with his crew. He is on the hot seat right now, setting up from one interview to the next. But that warrior today is Steve Hilton. And I'll tell you, Steve is known in his community as a fearless leader, ready to fight for California's patriots in this new era of Republican strength. Before we bring him in, let's take a look at his campaign video. This is going to give us a little sense of Steve Hilton. Let's play that video. Here we go.
It all started with freedom. My parents fled communism in Hungary. So I was born in England, a free country, but a country in rapid decline. My earliest political memory was Mrs. Thatcher, the first British leader in a generation with the courage to fight back for freedom. Our family didn't have money. My mom worked in a shoe store, my dad in construction. But like so many working class people, they just wanted a better life. My parents were so proud when I made it to Oxford University, and then when I got a job with the Conservative Party, working for Margaret Thatcher. She unleashed the spirit of enterprise in England. She inspired me. I started a business, even a couple of restaurants. That is a tough business. Later, I helped elect a prime minister, worked in 10 Downing Street. In 2012, we moved to America, to California, the ultimate expression of America, the home of freedom. Or it should be. I taught at Stanford University, started a company, wrote books, hosted a TV show. I lived the California dream. I raised my family here, made my life here, became an American. It was one of the proudest days of my life, but also a reminder of the madness, the masks, the lockdowns, the school closures. Look at these pictures, the chaos, the crime, the collapse of the California dream. This is not just any other state. California means to America what America means to the world. Let's make California the land of opportunity again. Great jobs, great homes, great kids. Let's make California an inspiration again, the very best of America. There's only one way to do that. We've got to end the one-party rule that got us into this mess. It's time to end the years of Democrat failure. It's time for a new future. That's why I'm running for governor, to make this beautiful state that we love so much truly golden again.
Well, I am here with you guys, and I see Steve Hilton sitting in that back room right now, ready to hop on in and join us. Steve, good afternoon. This is Kim Yater. All right, Steve, we've got you up, but we do not have video. Let's get that video cleared up on that back end. Got a frozen shot of you, Steve. So while we are working on getting Steve up, let's do this. Steve, I'm going to keep you right there if you need to pop out of the room. I see you in the back room, but I do not see you. So let's do this. I'm going to remove you again. And then, all right, Steve's going to pop back in. Guys, this is a really big day. Our candidates have been waiting for this interview, and they are warriors. They are running to and fro. They have been on interviews back to back, and they are taking on quite a load to run for the governor of California. Now, I did just hear that Steve was with Gavin. Now, I cannot tell you whether he was with Gavin Newsom in a conversation. I just heard the word Gavin. Gavin may have been one of his assistants, one of his producers. I don't know who Gavin is, but I am interested in seeing how that conversation went, if it was with our infamous Gavin Newsom. Now, we're still waiting for Steve to pop back in the room. What I may do at this moment, while we're waiting for Steve to pop in the room, I'm going to take a moment to do a brief introduction of Mr. Daniel Mercury. And before I bring Daniel in, while we're waiting for Steve, Daniel is also running for governor. And you know, I got to tell you guys, in life, we've got to be flexible. This is one of those moments of flexibility. So let's see how we do with that. So I am going to introduce you guys to an amazing warrior who is here for the fight for governor. You have seen him before in the past because he has been fighting for you behind the scenes. He fought in the recall. He fought again during another election. And let's give you a little taste of his background. Actually, you know what? Stand by. Daniel, I see Steve smiling in the background. So shall we try to pull him on again and do it in the right order? Let's give it a try. Let's see if we really have Steve on. Let's see. Do we got Steve on? Steve?
I can hear you if you can hear me.
Steve Hilton is in the house. Steve, I'm so glad that you're here. Last time I saw you was at the Republican event, and we got our eyes locked on one another across the room.
Exactly.
We got to connect, and it was a great moment. Well, welcome to the Take Your Power Back California Governor Face-Off Round 2. Now, Steve, we're going to have a lineup of questions today. And
Yes.
in our lineup of questions today, we're going to move pretty swiftly, but it is quite a lineup. And I know you do excellently with questions that are thrown your way. So I'm excited to see what your thoughts are today. So
Okay.
first up, are you ready?
Yeah, already.
All
Thank
right,
you.
here we
Great
go.
to
By
be
the
with
way,
you, by the way. This is going to be fun.
It's going to be so fun. I'm so excited. So, and we did share your video on the back
Yes.
end, which was beautiful. Love yellow, one of my colors, by the way. All right, Steve. Now, you moved from the UK to California in 2012 and
Yes.
became a United States citizen in 2021 after a notable career advising former UK Prime Minister David Cameron. What personal or professional factors drove your decision to leave the UK and fully commit to US citizenship?
Yes.
Do you maintain, now I'm going to throw these out there because you can pull them all in together. Do you maintain dual citizenship with the UK? And if so, how would you address voter concerns about potential conflicts of interest, particularly given your past ties to the UK's Conservative Party and Parliament?
Okay, very good. So it's a personal reason that we moved here. When we moved in 2012, it was just about a year after our second son was born, and my wife at the time was working. She's still my wife. I mean, at the time, my wife was working here for a California company, moving around, doing a lot of traveling. The time difference was a big factor, and we just felt like with a young son, our second son, it just felt like it was good for our family together and just be a bit more sane in terms of our schedules, that we would all be together in California. So that's the immediate reason for moving. But when we did that, it wasn't any kind of long-term aim in mind. But I do remember very clearly in 2016, so we'd been here 4 years, and I went back to the UK to campaign in the Brexit referendum. I was in favor of Brexit, and I wanted to go back and be part of that movement in 2016. And then when I got back from the campaign, obviously Brexit went through. And I remember landing at San Francisco airport after that trip. I've been away for a couple of weeks. And I was just looking out the window and I thought to myself, it's so great to be home. And I thought, that's so interesting. I just thought home. I do really feel that was the moment I realized this is our home, not just literally where we're raising our family and I've started a business here and done all these things, but actually, emotionally, spiritually. And I feel at home here. I feel connected to California, to America so deeply. And that's why we made the decision to stay and become Americans. And that happened in 2021. And to the point about dual citizenship, I think that, because you make the pledge when you become a citizen to renounce allegiance to all other principality. I can't remember the exact terminology, but I've renounced it. So that you say that in the pledge.
Mm-hmm. I got that. So let me ask you this. So the questions that we're asking today, they actually come from We the People California. And that means the people from across the state of California have sent over questions for you. So thank you for just being authentic with, answering that. And as California's governor, how would you demonstrate that your primary allegiance is to the people of California and the United States Constitution, especially when navigating state policies that may intersect with international interests?
Oh, well, look, I think everyone can see that I'm committed to this. I've been on the road for the last nearly 3 years, understanding the needs of everyday people across California, every single business area, every single type of family, every single part of the state. I've been right up north to Del Norte and Humboldt, and down south in Imperial and San Diego, where we saw each other, and everywhere. I've been I've been traveling the state for the last 3 years nearly. I gave up my show on Fox News to do this. I mean, everyone needs to understand that. When you're the host of a show, there's a very strong rule that you're not allowed to speak at political events, at Republican Party events. And so that was a constraint, my ability to really get out there, meet people, participate in events like Lincoln Reagan dinners and so on. So, how I've been doing this, and sorry, there are a little few flies here outside in the park.
You're good. You're good.
Being, this has been my life. This is my commitment. I've put everything behind this personally, and I'm very, very happy and proud to do it. I love this state so much. You talk to anyone, any of my friends, my friends, back in England, we go back once a year roughly at Christmas time to see friends and family, and they all say, oh, well, you were born to be there. You've always been a Californian
at heart. And so this is it. This is my life. This is everything I'm focusing on. By the way, one other thing I'd say, especially in the context of the politicians we've had on the other side, like Gavin Newsom, like Kamala Harris, who clearly view California and the governorship of California as a stepping stone to becoming president. I would make the point that that's not an option for me. This is the highest possible pinnacle for me in terms of service happen in this country, because of course I wasn't born here. And so this is it for me. I'm all about this.
We got a little bit of Wi-Fi issues on your side, Steve, just so you know. All right, so we just got we've got Steve Hilton on the back end right now on our Take Your Power Back California Governor Face-Off Round 2. Steve was just letting us know the importance of why he feels that this is home for him. And Steve, I'm hoping that Steve's going to pop back into the room and just, oh, fantastic. I'm back. Okay, fantastic, Steve. So Steve, love it. So I'm getting that this has really become home for you in the state of California. Absolutely getting that. Now, Steve, the people of California want to know, why should they vote for you when there are other candidates that are born and raised here? They've stayed. They've fought for their home through decades of change. And they're a little bit concerned that you have left your country and you've come here. And not that that's a bad thing. That's a great thing that you've come here, but they're just concerned that you're not going to have skin in the game like somebody who is actually from this state. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I've already got skin in the game. I've put skin in the game. As I said, I've been devoted to this for the last few years. I'm here as an American because I love America. And so I think that there's nowhere better on earth. There's nowhere better than California. It's just been so disastrously run by the people in charge. And I think the question for everyone watching and for every Californian is, who is best to win in 2026 to beat the Democrats and lead the change that we need to bring back common sense and turn this state around? We all know what needs to be done. It's obvious. Everything is a disaster, and there's one party rule from the Democrats for 15 years. I mean, we can go through the list. If you want to get to the different policy areas, I'm sure we will. But we know what a disaster it is, right? So the question is, it's not enough just to complain about it, to talk about it, to point out the problems. It's an election. And so there's only one thing that really matters, which is, how are we going to win? How are we going to win in 2026? And so my argument is that I am the strongest candidate with the best shot of actually winning in 2026, beating whoever the Democrats put forward, and then leading this state in a common sense direction across all the broad range of policy areas, which I've worked on for years, so that we can actually restore the California dream, which is the whole mission of this campaign.
I got that. Now, looking at that political track record of yours and your experience, you have never held an elected office, and your background is in media and policy, advising, not governance. So California's budget and bureaucracy are among the most complex in the nation. Do you know that? What practical experience qualifies you to manage a state with a $300 billion budget and entrenched problems like wildfire management, infrastructure decay, and how will you avoid the pitfalls of inexperience?
So I have a lot of experience in a lot of different areas that are perfect. Not least actually running businesses, both back in the UK and here in America, starting companies, managing a budget there, hiring people, making things happen in the real world. I totally agree that that's important experience for anyone to actually have done something. But I also have experience in government, in trying to fight exactly the kind of bureaucracy and navigate that you're talking about. Now, I'm not going to point back to my days back in the UK government, where I was really leading the effort to do what needs to be done here in California, which is reduce the sprawling, bloated government bureaucracy, reduce the regulations. That was two of the main things that I tried to do back in the day in the UK government. Now, I learned how the machinery of government fights back. I fought that battle for all the time that I was there. I learnt their tricks. I understand how they fight. It's the same wherever you go. Now, I'm not saying that we had success in those battles. That's because, to a great extent, I wasn't the decision maker. I was trying to make it happen, but I wasn't the elected leader of the country. Exactly as you say, I was there trying to develop and implement the plans. And so now, as someone who would be the elected leader, I know exactly how to get it done because I learned from the process of trying to do it before. And I think the other point I would make, which is really important in connection to this question of can you get it done? I've been working in one way or another, in the combination of these areas in government, politics, policy, the private sector. I've seen it all, in a lot of different ways. I've had a lot of experience at the very senior level in all these sorts of areas. And the thing that I've learned over these many years is that actually to make change happen, to make things really change, you need a combination of two things: clarity of conviction, so exactly.
Come back, Steve. We just lost you for a second.
Make things happen. No one has that.
You're back.
And I would, yes. So the clarity, the conviction, so what you want to do, and courage to actually make it happen, and to stand. Often that means standing against conventional wisdom when everyone else says you're wrong. So I would point to I think shows that I have that character to get things done. Number one, I was the first anywhere to stand up against the lockdowns in the COVID pandemic when everyone else was running, including many people now. They were against it all along, many very well-known people on the conservative side of the fence. I was the first, right back in the early days of the pandemic, in March 20, even during when we had those 15 days, as they called it, the 15 days to slow the spread. I was the first to say, this has to end. This is cruel. It's crushing business and communities and children's futures and faith communities. Churches shouldn't be closed. Schools shouldn't be closed. Businesses shouldn't be closed. I said that when no one else was saying it. I also led the way on the origins of the pandemic, when that was totally dismissed as a conspiracy theory. We now know exactly where the pandemic came from, Fauci's experiments. I was the first on television to let it. So I've got a track record of speaking out strongly, even when everyone else disagrees. And I think those are the qualities you need to actually make change happen.
Very good. Very good. So let's go back for a second. So when you were talking about implementing plans for David Cameron, were you involved in any global initiatives with Cameron that might influence your approach to California's challenges?
Not really. I was policy. So the only area of, you could say, international policy that I got involved in was right at the beginning. I had a very strong point of view that we needed to decouple from China, as I've been arguing here ever since I've been here in America. I'm very strong in that position for many years. It's one of the reasons I supported Donald Trump right back when he first entered the political arena in 2015, because he was the only candidate saying what I'd been saying for years, that we cannot have this dependent relationship on a country that is clearly intending to displace America as the world superpower. That's their intention. They've written it. You just have to read their speeches and what they write. So all along, I was very, very focused on decoupling from China. And so that's the one area of policy I did get at the beginning of the administration where I worked to say, look, we shouldn't be running around sucking up to China. That is a bad idea. Don't go and have some massive state visit to China, suck up to them like all these other countries. We should decouple from China and send a clear message we're not going to do that. Now, that I did succeed in persuading the kind of diplomats and bureaucrats and the prime minister, but the minute that I was gone, I'm afraid they lapsed back into that policy of engagement with China, which I think has just been a complete disaster. But generally speaking, I was focused only on domestic policy.
Got that. All right, Steve. So yesterday, because we're diving in, because I know you're like, all right, let's talk about my policies. Yesterday, you put out a press release, and I'm so glad that you put this out. It says, yet another refinery in danger of closing thanks to Newsom's assault on California energy. And here's what you said. Imagine if 3 refineries shut down in 1 year. That's an absolute disaster for our economy. It will hit working families and small businesses the hardest. You warned it means higher prices for gas, groceries, and every product that relies on transportation. It means tens of thousands of good paying jobs wiped out. It means California families are getting hammered even harder, all because of ideological zealots in Sacramento who think slogans are more important than survival. How are you going to change these
Yes.
destructive choices that Gavin Newsom is making?
In many ways, I was there yesterday in Bakersfield. I was on an oil field literally yesterday. People can watch the video because I'm such a strong supporter of our oil and gas industry, and the utter insanity of these Democrat policies where they are deliberately shutting down our own domestic production and instead shipping it in from halfway across the world. Even if you give them everything they say about climate change and carbon emissions, even on its own terms, it doesn't make sense. So actually turning that around is one of the easier changes we can make in California, because if you actually look at how Gavin Newsom and the Democrats have crushed our energy industry, it's actually it's not even through legislation or regulations. Stopped issuing permits to our oil producers and gas producers to do what they need to do. For example, if you have a well that's operating normally and it needs maintenance, there's something wrong, you need a permit for that. They refuse to issue permits for that. So that's how they systematically shut it down. They don't issue permits for expanding an existing well, let alone for drilling a new one. But that is in the hands of CalGEM, the regulatory agency. And that's one of the things that everyone needs to understand about the government. One of the questions that I get all the time, maybe we'll get it today, is like, well, what can you do because you have the state legislature and so on? Actually, there's a lot you can do because you control the executive branch, and you appoint thousands of people to hundreds of agencies. And this one is one of the easier ones. You appoint you appoint common sense, pro-California energy people to CalGEM, and you tell them to issue permits. You can pretty much start turning things around overnight. And then that not only increases production, so that means our domestic production goes up, that also means you have more supply for the refineries that are on the coast, and that means they're more likely to stay in business. One of the reasons the refineries are leaving is because we've got this special blend of oil that's needed to be produced in California in the refineries, and they can't even operate with the crude oil that's coming in from Iraq and places like that. So that's one of the reasons they're leaving. If we boost domestic production here in California, that also helps keep the refineries here. Because right now, I mean, this morning, I did an event at a gas station. There are insiders in the industry telling me that within 3 weeks, because of this refinery crisis, we could be seeing shortages in California, lines at the gas stations, even $8 a gallon for gas. So this is totally avoidable. And I would take we could turn this around quickly. It's one of the easier things that we need to do.
Okay, well, I love that. And you got to tell me, though, the people want to know, how are you going to drown out the elites' voices in Sacramento? Because you're going to have a constant battle. So
Yes.
what can you do for the people's voices to be heard? If they're in complete support of what you're saying right now, they want to know that the work is going to get done and their voice is going to be heard.
Yes. So I call it the Democrat industrial complex. That's what control. And you know, I'm not afraid of taking them on. So the first week of my campaign on Friday, so I launched in Huntington Beach on a Tuesday.
Congratulations.
On Wednesday, we were in San Francisco. On Thursday, Fresno in the Central Valley. On Friday, I went to Sacramento, and I made a whole speech right outside the Capitol about what I call the Democrat industrial complex, which is the machine politicians, the Democrats, and this is the elites you're talking about, right? But it's not just the politicians. It's the politicians, the unions who fund them, the activists who give them their ideological instructions, and the bureaucrats that they appoint. It's all this one Democrat machine, right? I'm not afraid of these people. We did, you know, those giant rats that unions sometimes put outside when they're picketing a business.
I hear there's a lot of those up in San Francisco area.
Right. Well, I used one of them and said that against the unions, and it was this giant rat, and we put Democrat industrial complex. Thank you very much. Yes. We have a supporter here saying, get rid of that new scum.
Here we go. We are
you,
all in agreement. Here we go.
So look,
Back to you,
I'm
Steve.
just saying, I don't care what they think. I've got a very clear plan for this election. I don't care about people. Here's the thing that everyone needs to understand. I hear all the time, oh, how are you going to persuade Democrats? How are you going to persuade independents? How are you going to do? Actually, there are enough Republican voters in California to win in 2026. We just saw that with President
Yes,
Trump's
we did.
numbers
That is
in
true.
2024. And if you look at that populist revolution, again, this is something I've been very consistent about. The theme of my show on Fox News was positive populism, lifting up the working class. And that's what I wrote a whole book called Positive Populism. And I think that is how we win in California. Working class people who of all backgrounds, but of course in California, a lot of that, the Latino community. On Monday, I was in East LA in talking, with the Latino community there, sitting in a Mexican coffee shop, talking with people. Their clarity on issues like immigration and deportation and wealth.
Come back, Steve. All right. We are with Steve Hilton right now.
Right.
And
They're going to scream and they're going to call us all these rude words. I don't care, right? We just got to get it done.
I got it. So we lost you for a second, but we got the sentiment of what you were saying, Steve. All right, let's talk about the rising crime rates. This is a really big deal. Steve, Californians are concerned about the rising crime rates, especially property crimes in cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles, and the growing challenges of homelessness, often linked to public safety. As a Republican in a predominantly Democratic state, I mean, we know there's lots of Republicans, we saw it, but this is a Democratic state, so it seems right now. How will you bridge the partisan divide to create effective public safety measures, and what specific steps will you take to address homelessness in a way that respects the God-given rights of all Californians? Let's dive into your vision. Steve, did we lose you? Oh,
I'm back, but I can.
That was a sprint, Steve. That was a sprint moment, a significant moment. It was a sprint moment. Back to you. Come on, here we go.
I'm really sorry. I missed the question because the signal went out. I know you talk about crime. What's the question?
Yes. All right. Stand by. Your question specifically is, Californians are concerned about the rising crime rates,
yes,
especially property crimes in cities like San Fran and Los Angeles, and the growing challenges of homelessness, often linked to public safety. So as a Republican in a predominantly Democratic state, how will you bridge partisan divides to create effective public safety measures? And what specific steps, Steve, will you take to address homelessness in a way that respects the God-given rights of all Californians? Now, I don't mean to go and do what Newsom did when President Xi was here in town with Biden. I don't mean that. I want a real answer, Steve.
Okay, so on homelessness, there's three things. Number one, we have to enforce the law, right? It is illegal to camp in public, and the law needs to be enforced. And now we're slowly starting to see some change in that area, but it's too slow. And for years, they've let this problem fester. We would never allow people that we love to live in the conditions we see. I was on Skid Row with Benny Johnson just last Friday. I mean, it's just absolutely appalling. And it's been like that for years, and it's just not acceptable. So, but point number two is we have to give people the treatment that they need, because I've just started this. I've talked to people. I've been on the streets with people working with the homeless, and over 80%, maybe even closer to 90 or 100 of the people who are living on the streets have either mental health problems or drug addiction or some combination. We have to get them into treatment. But you've got a law that was passed in 2016 called Housing First that makes it illegal for any organization receiving state money to attach conditions to any housing that may be offered. So you cannot require sobriety. You cannot require treatment. You cannot require someone participates in mental health treatment. That's got to change, right? People need to be helped. And if they don't absolutely ready to take that help now, then they have to be encouraged towards that position, because we cannot allow these serious medical conditions, in many cases, serious mental illness, which is, by the way, a lot of the time now it's being treated in our jails. That's actually where, I mean, I was with the sheriff up in Sonoma County the other week, and that's his number one complaint, which is we end in the county jails dealing with the mental health issues affecting people who are homeless and others. And then the third part of it, which is connected, is mental health beds. There's a ridiculous rule that was established. You can understand the reasons why, but it's now totally out of date. For Medicaid, most of the funding that goes towards mental health treatment is reimbursed through Medicaid. It's federal. And there's a limit. You can only get reimbursed. It's called the Institutions of Mental Disease Rule. It means that you don't get any Medicaid reimbursement if the mental health institution has more than 16 beds. It was a rule that was set up back in the origins of Medicaid when there was concern about mental asylums, one flew over the cuckoo's nest, all of this stuff. And we've got now the first Trump administration set up a waiver from that. So states could apply for a waiver so they could have larger facilities and still get Medicaid reimbursement. California, of course, didn't apply for it. I would apply. Then we could use our money more efficiently to have modern, effective mental health facilities.
Very good. Very good. Steve, you mentioned law enforcement a moment ago. Let's traverse just for a moment. So California is a sanctuary state. There are 11 sanctuary cities, San Diego being one of them, a super sanctuary city.
San Diego's the worst.
Oh, it is absolutely the worst. You know, I ran the Take Our Border Back movement across the country, an amazing team, and really educating and empowering the people to secure this nation. Now, let me ask you this. The people want to know, are you willing to have ICE, Homeland Security, work with law enforcement to secure our golden state of California? And you say yes, and I believe that you say that it is as you say. How are you going to do this with the current laws that are in place?
Well, the interesting thing about this, so it's SB 54, which was passed in 2017. And the interesting thing about that is a good friend of mine, Michael Gates, who was the city attorney of Huntington Beach and has now been appointed by President Trump. He's now in the Justice Department. In number 3, Dylan and Leo Terrell. Fantastic guy, good friend and good supporter of mine on the advisory board for my organization, Golden Together, my policy organization. So he's suing. One of the last things he did as city attorney in Huntington Beach was sue the federal government.
Come back, Steve. And we are here with Steve Hilton on the Take Your Power Back California Governor Face-Off Round 2. Steve, let's piggyback one sentence back. We missed that. Your friend Gavin. You mentioned Gavin. Can you hear me, Steve?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
All right. You had just go back one sentence. You had mentioned Gavin. Pick it up from Gavin.
I'm sorry, I'm not clear what.
No worries, no worries. We lost you on that last segment. We're going to traverse.
I'm talking about the sanctuary state bill being unconstitutional.
Yes.
And Huntington Beach. I'll just finish this point. So my friend Michael Gates, who was the city attorney of Huntington Beach, he's now in the department. President Trump appointed him. He has sued, and the lawsuit's it's still going on. He's suing the California government in federal court on the grounds that California's sanctuary state law is unconstitutional.
Absolutely.
Because it requires, and so that should give us confidence to challenge this, right? It's not some given. And so I think I know Tom Homan very well. He's a very good friend, and we've got to work with ICE to protect our communities.
Yes.
And so I've got no time for these sanctuary. It's all posturing, and it's hurting. I mean, the San Diego one is offensive. I mean, they're even giving, legal fee. They're paying San Diego tax for criminals with deportation notices, paying their legal proceedings. It's completely unacceptable.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve, now that we're, Let's talk a little bit about the recent law, Bill 379, laws on sex offenders. This was fresh
Yeah.
for all of us, right? Bill 379 passed concerning the protection of 16 and 17-year-olds from those who solicit them for sex. There's been recent debate and amendments to this initially. So AB 379, for those who are not aware, aimed to make it a felony to solicit sex from a minor under 18, including those 16 and 17-year-olds. Now, this would have broadened the scope of existing law, which already made it a felony to have sex with a minor and to solicit or engage in sexual activity with someone under 18, but treated the solicitation of older teens, 16 and 17, as a misdemeanor. So tell me, Democrats on the Assembly Public Safety Committee amended the bill, removing the provision that would have made soliciting older teens a felony. What will you do to protect the children and our teenagers?
So the first thing I would say about this is to remind everyone why we're in this insane position of having to introduce legislation to make something that is so obviously evil a felony.
Come back, Steve. We're here with Steve Hilton. All right. So Steve's got a little bit of Wi-Fi challenges today, a beautiful view in the park behind him. He's had a couple of supporters saying, get rid of Gavin Newsom. So you are here at the Take Your Power Back show. Steve, back to you.
I'm sorry?
Back to you. We lost you. We lost that whole last minute.
All right. So I just want to take people back and remind them that remember, why are we in this position, this insane position of having to introduce laws to make something a felony? Obviously is evil and wrong. And I've been following this for years now because Shannon Grove, my friend, Senator Shannon Grove, has been working on this for years. She's been introducing legislation on this for the last 3 years. And the reason that we have to do that is because of Kamala Harris and Proposition 57. So everyone's heard of Prop 47. That was the one that we reversed most of last year with Prop 36 that legalized theft up to $950 a day.
Yes.
But after that was Prop 57. That downgraded a whole bunch of crimes to the things that didn't automatically get jail time because it's part of the left-wing ideology of criminal justice reform, as they call it, and decarceration, which is basically no one should ever go to jail. So there's a whole list of really disgraceful, heinous crimes were downgraded. Domestic violence, on, including all these crimes to do with sex and children. And that's why we've got to reinstate them. So that's the origin of it. Don't forget that. It was Kamala Harris who did that with this ballot. Who totally misleadingly sold.
Yeah.
So obviously, I mean, now the Democrats have reversed themselves on this and realize what a nightmare it is for them who are defending this kind of disgusting predatory behavior. But it shows you what they really think, that their first instinct is to do the wrong thing. We can't relax on this. We have to.
Come back, Steve. Come back, Steve. All right. So we are here with Steve Hilton
this week.
Fantastic. Steve, we got the sentiment of what you said. We've got a few challenges with Wi-Fi. We're going to transition for a second, but we are talking about the protection of our children, the protection of our beautiful state. This country and the state of California has shed so much innocent blood. When it comes to abortions, running on the Republican ticket is an indication that you are a conservative. If that is true, do you support abortions? Yes or no?
No, I'm not pro-abortion at all. And I think that the point we have to make is that, and just be practical about this. So I've always believed, as President Trump, that, and he acted on it finally, that this issue should have been decided by the people, not by the courts and the judges. So that's what's happened as a result of the president's actions, which people voted for. And so that that's happened now in California, and it's in the state constitution. Whether we like it or not, That's the policy. That's the law. It's the Constitution of California. So that's not going to change, whoever's elected governor. But what we can do is move the needle towards life in California. And we can make sure that we're not so anti-family, that we create a society where people want to have children and want to keep the precious babies because they can raise them affordably in California and make a life here. So that's part of the story. We have to support the service, the organizations that are trying to protect precious babies. We have to do more on adoption. There's a whole set of things that we can do to actually be in a way, realistically in favor of life in California. What can you do within the Constitution? There's actually a lot.
Well, Steve, help me to rectify this for myself. And there just may not be a full understanding for me. We have a constitution for the country. Does the constitution that we have for the country supersede the California state constitution when it comes to life or death or killing an innocent child?
Well, it depends on it. These things are hashed out in court, but you've got the Constitution of the as now by the Supreme.
Come back, Steve. We just lost you there. That was important. What you're saying is very important. So we're going to have Steve come back.
The U.S.
We're here
constitutional
Steve,
arrangements.
Let's do this, Steve. Let's pause that for a second because it was so important what you were saying, and your voice deserves to be heard. Come back again. Let's answer that question one more time.
So, as now been determined by in line with the U.S. Constitution by the Supreme Court, which found that there was no automatic right, as with the overturning of Roe v. Wade in the U.S. Constitution to an abortion, but that is in the state constitution. And so that is the case here in California. And so the conflict there is similar to so many of these issues that end up being resolved in court. And you're seeing it play out on a whole range of issues. So if a candidate done the California something that's in because of a U.S. Constitution, I'd like to see the legal reasoning there. I haven't seen anything that suggests that that's a possibility.
Okay, I got that. But it sounds to me that you are committed to ending this practice in California. If there's something that you can do, what I hear, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you are committed to ending this practice in California, not just accepting it as status quo.
I would like to, I very much want to be, I would like to see fewer unwanted pregnancies in the first place.
Yeah.
And I would like to see babies, we need more families, we need more children. I want to encourage that. And that's the direction I want to go. And I want to make sure all our policies in California are pro-family and support the birth of more children.
Come on. And you need a house in California. You need a place to live. So let's talk about policy and governance. California faces a housing crisis with median home prices over $800,000 in many areas. I mean, I live in the Claremont area. My house is close to $1 million. It is a small 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It's crazy. Your campaign emphasizes supporting working families. Yet
Yes.
Critics argue your conservative platform may prioritize deregulation over protections for renters and low-income residents. Can you provide specific policies to make housing affordable without sacrificing tenant rights? And how will you fund them without raising taxes that would impact the working family?
Well, first of all, there are hidden housing taxes that people aren't aware of that actually raise the price. So that's the first thing we can do, is cap or remove hidden housing. They're called impact fees. So when developers build a house, they pay what's called impact fees. And these fees used to be a few grand for, something to go towards parks or whatever. Now, sometimes it's up to 20% of the price of a house. It's got completely astronomical. And so you've got to cap impact fees. Secondly, You've got to end this war on single family homes. The reason that housing, one of the main reasons housing is so expensive in California, is you've had this ideological crusade to make everyone live, and it's part of their climate extremism, right? And carbon emissions, that everyone should live in an apartment and take public transit, no more cars, no more single family homes. The suburbs are that's their ideology.
15-minute cities.
As a result of that, the price, if all the development has to be within an existing urban or suburban boundary, that means that the price of the land goes up. We have plenty of land in California to build on. We only have about 5% of our land that's developed. That's one of the lowest proportions in the entire country. We can build the single family homes that people want, that's the California dream, without forcing communities that don't want housing to accept it. It's totally crazy what's going on now. We have to end the war on single family homes, end the ridiculous regulations that make it so expensive to build homes. Every single year they change the building codes. That contributes to the cost. And stop the hidden taxes on housing. There's a whole set of specific things we can do to make housing, whether you buy or rent, more affordable.
Will that be one of the first things you take on as governor, or what will be one of the first things the moment in office that you take on?
Well, I think that the point that we all need to understand is that the scale of the task in turning around California is even greater than President Trump coming into office and taking over the federation. And I think there's a real parallel in terms of the preparation that needs to be done to make, because really the answer to your question is to start to take on that bureaucracy in Sacramento. Because I go around the state, as I mentioned, I'm on the road all the time, and I always ask people, like, what business owners, families, whatever, like, where's the pain coming from? All the stuff that makes it impossible to live here, impossible to afford the basics of a decent life. Everything's so expensive. Everything's such a hassle and a nightmare. And overwhelmingly, people say, well, it's this agency, or the Air Resources Board, or the Coastal Commission, or it's all this bureaucracy, these agencies of the state government. And so the first task is to take that on and just to clear out the ideologues and the far left extremists and put in place common sense people who are going to turn things around, because they understand we've got to bring costs of government down. We've got to bring all this nanny state, bossy interference, got to get rid of all of that. And the governor controls the executive branch. You control agencies. So that is the first thing you can do that the more quickly we'll see good results in terms of people having the freedom to live their lives the way they want, with all this, without all this endless BS from the government.
When you are there dealing with all of that, what are you willing to compromise? And what are you unwilling to compromise?
That is a great question. And I think that it is true to say that it's looking at just being realistic about the political map. You've got more than likely, you're going to have the Democrats still controlling the state legislature. And so there's a lot that you can do as governor. You can, as I just mentioned, you control the executive branch, you appoint people to these agencies. Secondly, you can veto legislation. Yes, they can overturn it if they have a 2/3 majority, but then you can slow it all down. It takes time for them to overturn it. You can really put a brake on the nonsense coming in. You appoint judges. You can do it. There's a whole set of things you can do. But it also is true that you would want to enshrine some of these things in legislation to make some progress. And so I think that is, my attitude will be, when I'm elected governor, that will be a political earthquake in California, if I can use that term, or let's say a revolution. I would expect the legislature to work with me to enact that agenda, and I would work with them. But here's the bottom line. What I won't compromise on is I will not accept, sign in any way, anything that increases the regulatory burden on Californians, anything that increases taxes on Californians, anything that that's got to be a red line. We've got to go lower, not higher, on the size of government, the scope of government, regulations, and taxes.
I got that. All right. We are getting close to the finish line. And I know there's probably some things that you definitely want to talk about. But before we get there, with President Trump leading the nation, how will you align California with his America First vision?
Well, I think the thing that is so interesting about what you've seen with President Trump, and he uses this phrase all the time, which is common sense. It's not ideological. And that's exactly how I see what I'm arguing for and the changes that we need to make in California. They're practical. They're not ideological. They're like, how do we make it easier to run a business? How do we get the ideology and the indoctrination out of the schools and just have the schools, the public schools, focus on teaching kids? Because we have such terrible results. We have, less than half of the students in our public schools can read at grade level, meet state standards. With math, it's 33%. That's just you've got to have proper teaching methods that actually teach kids how to read and do math. These are practical things. Same with the regulations. Like, all of these things are common sense. It's not ideological. And I think that is the thing that we have in common in terms of what's happening at the federal level and what needs to happen in California. We've had way too much ideology in California. That's why everything's gone off the rails. We've got to get back to just common sense, positive, practical things. And the issues are going to be slightly different because it's the state versus the federal government. But the idea of just doing practical things that help families, that help business, I think that is, especially small business, because they're being crushed by these policies in California. So I think that is really the theme, which is just common sense. That's how we're going to make California golden again.
I like that. I like making California golden again. Steve, when you are standing face to face with Gavin Newsom and he is handing over the crown of California governor to you, what will your words to him be?
I
like that.
I think, well, I don't know. I'd say probably the crown would be much more. He's got a nice bed of hair for the crown.
He does, yes.
So for me, a little bit more, little bit more, sharp the edges. Look, I don't know. I mean, I just think that in the end, I'm not really interested. Look, the thing that's so clear is that this regime, this Democrat regime, has just completely failed on every. That was why the book that I just wrote, which really is called Caliphalia, reversing the ruin of America's worst run state. I actually wanted to go on his podcast. Pretty much everyone else has been on his podcast. We tried to go on his podcast so I could debate with him.
He hasn't invited you on his podcast
He hasn't invited.
Gavin Newsom, what are you doing?
I know. I've got a whole book about California that we can debate. So I don't think he's in the mood for talking to me at all. And then I just noticed that yesterday he launched a brand new website which is called California Facts. It's like a fact-checking website. And apparently the purpose of this website, he says, is to fact check the misinformation from the MAGA trolls. So here's his new website. The first person he went after, the main image on this new website was a post from me. And he said it was.
Come back, Steve. We lost you. Take that again. What did he say? We lost you there. Come back. We're here with Steve Hilton on round 2 of Take Your Power Back California Governor Face Off. All right, one more time. We didn't get that last part, and that was so significant. Bring it back.
So I can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Okay, very good. So look, the point is that he went after me on day 1 of his new fact-checking website, saying that I was putting out false information by claiming that people are leaving California. He said, actually, our population is increasing. But why is it increasing? Because that's illegal immigration. I put a post up responding today, and we have all the statistics. It's illegal immigration that's the reason the population is growing. We still have hundreds of thousands of people leaving California because they can't take the pain anymore of living in this state with the endless taxes, regulations, and hassle of doing everything. However, there are many of us here, everyone watching, I'm sure, who want to stay and fight to save our beautiful state. That's what I'm planning to do.
Come on, Stephen. Last question for you today. In case there's anything else you want to add, you are welcome to do that. Now, your book, Califalia, Reversing the Ruin of Americans' Worst State, what we were just talking about. What is your call to action for we the people in this book, and your call to action for every listener and absolute lover of the state of California?
Yes, I just would say, just to be really precise, the subtitle, Reversing the Ruin of America's Worst Run State. Not the as far as I'm concerned, it's the best state, but the worst run. And
thank you for that clarification.
And in fact, part 2 of the book is called Califuture. And that's the plan for how we turn things around. Look, it's very simple. We have to win in 2026. That's all there is to it. If we take it's not going to be, I mean, the theme of your show, take back control, take back our power, take back our state. But we've got to do it with our work and our votes. And of all the things we can do, I think this is the best shot we have, is winning in 2026. To finally do this. It's the best shot for 20 years. And we've really got to, because people can see how terribly they've mismanaged everything. There's a real mood for change. The tide is turning. We see it in election results last November, in the ballot initiatives. Look, it's not going to be easy, but it can be done. Work hard and building a grassroots movement across the state for change. On day 2 of my campaign in Fresno, I announced our goal to knock on 1 million doors between now and the primary next June, because we've got to have this grassroots movement. That's how we're going to do this. So I really want people to join me in that. Join my army. SteveHiltonforGovernor.com. Sign up, get involved. We're just getting organized at the local level, and we can do this if we work together.
I love it. And that is SteveHiltonforGovernor.com. You can you all can see that below. SteveHiltonforGovernor.com. Love your website, by the way. Steve, thank you for your authenticity. Thank you for setting the vision for Califuture and what we have to look forward to. So an absolute honor to be with you. And I'm going to give you a personal invite to our November 1st. Take Your Power Back California Governor Face-Off Showdown in person in Carlsbad, November 1st. Steve, will you look at your calendar and join us?
I will definitely do that. I can't wait to see it. I hope I'll see you before then.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for your time today.
Of course.
You have an amazing day, and God bless. We will be in communication.
Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Oh, an honor. We were listening in to Steve Hilton running for the governor of our golden state of California. This has been an amazing show today, a great interview. We are not done yet. We've got 2 more interviews that are just sitting here waiting. These guys are in the back room going, let's go, let's go, let's go. I'm so excited. But before we bring in our next round of warriors, and our next warrior that is coming up is Daniel Mercury. Now, before we bring in Daniel Mercury, what we're going to do is we're going to take a moment to thank our sponsors, and then we'll tell you all about Mr. Daniel Mercury. With that being said, why do we have sponsors today? Well, why am I sharing about sponsors? That's a great question. It is so imperative that we share about the sponsors. Why? Because they are what makes the Take Your Power Back show possible. Our sponsors today are Patriots Buying American. Not sure if you've heard of Patriots Buying American, but let me tell you what, we're so grateful for this sponsor. This sponsor is giving we the people our power back in the midst of economic warfare. Here's the deal. If we continue to spend our money supporting the big box retailers that feed into the corruption, Procter & Gamble, Colgate and Palmolive, Johnson & Johnson, Unilever, we continue to feed the machine and we continue to live sick. Why? Because of the junk that's in those types of products. Parabens, alcohol, sulfates, triclosan, quaternary disinfectants. Your skin is the biggest organ of your body. What's on your skin within 26 seconds? That's right. 26 seconds hits your bloodstream. So how do you change it? You get the junk out of the trunk. You get the chemicals off of your body, out of your home, and you begin to fuel the body with what is good. This Patriot American resource is debt-free, privately held, and they are here to support every freedom-loving American. Check them out. They're patriotsbuyingamerican.com. patriotsbuyingamerican.com. That's patriotsbuyingamerican.com. We made the switch 20 years ago. We took our power back. We are voting with our dollars. You too can vote with your dollars and support farmers, ranchers, patriots, ministries, and families just like you. patriotsbuyingamerican.com. All right, our next sponsor up, which we want to say a big thank you to because our sponsors are what keep freedom alive. Our next sponsor is called Patriot TV Beef. Well, Patriot TV, the Take Your Power Back show is now on Patriot TV. So what is Patriot TV Beef? Well, what if you could access the never ever hormone or antibiotic black label beef? The best beef in town. And President Trump, if you are listening to this, I enjoyed my beef at Mar-a-Lago. It was extraordinary. But I've got to tell you, PatriotTVBeef.com has the best beef, the resource to the best beef, never ever hormone or antibiotic black label beef and vertical integration. So guys, I'm going to send you there a little bit later. You definitely want to go to Patriot. You want to go to PatriotTVBeef.com. That's PatriotTVBeef.com. And thank you, Patriot TV Beef, for being our sponsor to today's show. All right, guys, without further ado, we are in for such a treat. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. It's going to take times like this that we have a space where those that are running for office can show up, where we the people can bring the questions to the table, the real questions to the table, the questions that we the people are going, you know what, I want this to be asked. And what we did was we gathered questions today from you, from we the people all throughout the state of California, all the different organizations, and we brought these questions to the table. So our next speaker up, I am so excited, you guys. His name is Daniel Mercury. And before we bring him in, for those of you that have just joined our show, I want to welcome every single one of you. Welcome to the California Governor Face-Off Round 2. We are cranking up the heat. We just finished up our first interview with Steve Hilton. So get ready. The voice of we the people is being ignited, and we are shaking the foundations of the status quo. We are going to dive on in again. And for those of you who are just catching on to what we're up to today, we're coming off the explosive round 1 of the California Governor Face-Off, where Sheriff Bianco, Leo Zaki, and Leo Naranjo shook the state with their bold visions. That show created a massive stir. Some of you heard this after 27 interviews of Sheriff Bianco, some hitting 1 million views. Sheriff Bianco made headlines for the first time on MSN covering his controversial interview and the concerns of we the people, proving our platform is waking up California. You've heard General Flynn say, local action equals national import. Well, we the people are taking local action, and he says this is the time of the digital warriors, and we are the digital warriors. So thank you so much to all of our live streamers that are streaming today's show. Now, with President Trump back in the White House, Republicans have a historic chance to take our power back, not just in DC, but right here in the golden state of California. Tonight, we're diving into round 2 of the California Governor Face-Off, featuring exclusive one-on-one interviews with what you just saw, Steve Hilton. Up next, Daniel Mercury, and after that, Kobe Markham. Expect some more hard-hitting questions, unfiltered insights, and bold plans to restore California's greatness. So grab your faith, your courage, and your patriotic fire. Let's take our power back together. And joining us for a second segment right now is Daniel Mercury. He is the fearless leader who served our country and rescued many lives, has been fighting for California's freedom-loving patriots, our God-given Constitution, and the beautiful state of California. Daniel is ready to bring his fire to the face-off. Now, Daniel, before I bring him into the room, I want you all to watch this video. This is Daniel's campaign video. And I'll tell you, I love how our candidates put the time, energy, and effort into these videos. It's a powerful video. Let's all watch.
My name is Daniel Mercury. As the next governor of California come 2026, I intend to clean house. I served my country honorably as a Black Knight in the United States Navy. I stand for the Constitution, the Second Amendment, the protection of our children, and I only kneel for God.
If you don't know the law, there is no law.
As a constitutionalist, I know the law. California is not the reflection of the country I fought for. Californians have suffered enough rising crime, invasion of illegal aliens, homelessness, absurd taxation, power outages, and wildfires. As your next governor, that ends on my watch. As a husband, a father, small business owner, author, and a veteran, I will not let California go quietly into the night. To every corrupt bureaucrat who has subverted the right of the people and the Constitution, my message to you is this:
Justice is coming under my administration. Count on it.
Daniel Mercury, welcome to the Take Your Power Back show. An honor to have you here today. Oh, let's get you unmuted. Can you?
Thank you. I just unmuted myself. I really
Fantastic.
appreciate you being inviting me here. I really appreciate being here. This is an amazing opportunity to speak to your audience and the things that I stand on, and I'm excited.
I'm so excited to have you here. Daniel, first, I want to say thank you for your service. And
Thank
I
you.
mean that. And every listener right now wants to say thank you. You know, President Trump just honored veterans. And today was a really special day, May 8th, that he did a special honor to veterans. So, Daniel, would you tell me, when you say Black Knight, and I saw that video, I'm like, okay, it's got to be something like a SEAL. It's got to be like, what is the role of a Black Knight? And how is that going to translate into your ability to lead the state of California?
Oh, that's an easy question. Well, first, what was a Black Knight? What is a Black Knight? So it's a helicopter squadron for the Black Knights, and they were named the Black Knights because of the operations that they were able to do, going as far back as Vietnam, doing everything at night without NVG goggles. In fact, that was part of our training, was to be able to do low and starlight training to be able to operate in areas of high and medium threats areas, so that we could do inserts, extracts, and medevacs. And we had to train in all various, working with SEAL teams, doing spec ops and spec op assists, working with getting people in and out. So I performed combat search and rescue over maritime, was a rescue swimmer. So when you see that portion of the individual jumping out of the helicopter, that was a huge part of our training. Also, dealing with inserts where you have to bring in special forces, whether we work with in tandem with other teams, Marines, Air Force, you name it, you have to train Joint Task Force, Special Force training, so that you understand what you're doing in the environment that you're in. So it'd be different environmental trainings and terrains. So there was a lot of pressure involved. And when people say, is this something that you can handle? I was designated by the Wing Command, CAC 14, as the standardized search and rescue petty officer of the Black Knights, which means I had to make sure that everybody was operational ready. So in a battle group of 10,000, no operations could go, no flights could take off, no operations could even be instituted until search and rescue and combat search and rescue was ready to go, because our biggest thing that we wanted to make sure was everybody was to come home. and I had to make sure everybody was operational ready. And that was a very intense position to be in, but it was also a privilege, and it was one that I greatly honored. I cherish. I was honored to be picked and chosen to be in that position, and one that I hold to the highest esteem while I was in.
Mm. Quite a few insights you have taking on that role. So, how would that shape your approach to governing California, particularly in areas like healthcare policy, community support, and leadership under pressure?
That's a great question too. I love your questions. The way it translates is the fact that, again, we never back down. And this is one of the biggest reasons that I tell people I was born in California. This is my state. This is where I, swore into the military. I went to school here. I met my wife. I proposed to her here. I'm raising my children, my beautiful children, who are homeschooled. Unfortunately, I don't trust the educational system with the indoctrination that's going on. And it really translates into, how am I going to fight, or am I even going to fight? And this is exactly what I have been doing, is driving up and down the state of California for nearly 6 years in total. And what that basically means is I have been educating the people on how to fight back at the local and state and federal level, in the sense is, what can we do to hold our representatives to the feet to the fire, even if I'm not in the position of governor or assembly or senate? What can the people truly do that will give them the power that they already have, but they don't really know how to use it? And this is why I have stepped into this race, is because of the things that I have learned over these years, so much so that I wrote a book that I realized where corrupt government hides and operates, and the people don't know this. And it has just weighed on my heart. It's a spiritual call. It's something that I just can't consciously, nothing that I believe has been bestowed upon me by the Holy Spirit, to share that with the people of our state and our country. And so much so that I've given out probably over 1,000 free copies. It's not about the money. It's not about getting likes and clicks and stars. It's about really educating and waking up the people, because even if we don't, I pray to God that we will, and I truly believe that we are going to take the state back. I believe that we're going to, exactly like your slogan says, take power back. I really believe we're going to get California back. But that's going to come also too by educating the people. And I've taken on the painstaking burden of doing that, and really putting on PowerPoints, symposiums, and helping people on what really we fall and prey to when it comes to our the medical industry, when it comes to our homelessness, when it comes to our education, and our justice reform, workforce economics, and so on. How does this all play out, and why are we enduring what we're enduring? Why is everything falling on deaf ears? Why don't we see any investigations? We don't see any indictments. There's no one getting prosecuted. We know that these people on the left, the Democrats, are getting away with just egregious behaviors. Why don't we see anything happening to these individuals who we know are in violation of their oath of office? And that's another reason why I'm running. And that's another reason why I have been taking on the time and waking up the people.
All right, let's talk a little bit about electability and name recognition. Okay, so we just had Steve on, right? And we definitely see the background. You come with wow, you are one of our veterans who have served and has rescued many. And California is definitely in a position where it needs to be rescued right now. So, as a lesser known candidate compared to the high profile figures like Steve Hilton, how will you build the statewide recognition and coalition needed to compete in California's top two primary system? And what's your strategy to unify diverse voter groups, urban, rural, progressive, and conservative, in a state where Republicans haven't won a governor race since 2006?
Well, the first thing is already been doing it, which is, this is why I actually made my declaration back in, I believe it was in November 16th of 2022, timestamped on my Facebook social media account for running this race, that I have built up quite a bit of following in most of our counties. In fact, I visited all 58 counties at least 2 or 3 times. But over the last 3 years, I have been focusing on more of the rural areas. I have been focusing on areas where I have discovered also where the missing votes are at. It took me about a year to discover that historically we've had roughly 13 million people on average that come out to vote for the governor race. And then that's split in half, roughly a little bit more, 60% to the Democrats, which is about 7 to 7.5 million. The rest go to the Republican, and maybe the remaining to the other party. Where are the other 17 million people? Well, again, when we have 40 million, 10 million, are unable to vote, but then that's 30 million. So we have 13, there's 17 left. I was able to find at least 9.7 million in the missing areas that I have been reaching out to. I have been traveling to, I have been reaching out to some of the smaller patriot groups. And I'll tell you right now, there is an incalculable amount of people who do not want an establishment pick. They are looking hard for a grassroots candidate. In fact, so much so now they are doing their homework unlike I've ever seen before. In fact, my own campaign has taken off in such a way that I didn't expect it to really go in the direction it's going in as soon as it has. And that is because people want someone that they can identify with, someone that is of the people, and someone that is not a name. They're looking for somebody who is of them, which blew my mind away as to how often my phone is ringing, emails are coming in, interviews are nonstop. Just this week alone, it's already 5 events nonstop. So this is a really telling tale of where the people's mindsets are at. And this also is coming from both parties. It's not just coming from the Republican side. Democrats also are looking for a candidate that isn't an establishment pick, that they're not really interested in name recognition. And they understand too, unfortunately, some of the parties will only focus on how much a candidate can raise. Why is that important to them? I understand the answer behind that, and we can talk about it later. But what this is saying is that I've been doing exactly what I set out to do, and I am getting that name recognition so much so that I've actually had phone calls from other gubernatorial candidates' campaigns asking me to step aside. They have asked me to run for lieutenant governor. I am a thorn in their side. I have prevented them from raising certain funds, and they really want me out of their way. That just means I'm doing the right thing.
I love that. I love that. So let's go back to the ballot box for a second, okay? And the elections. How will you, as governor, secure the ballot box?
As far as how am I going to get people to vote for me?
Well, I would say this. Let's put you in the position as governor right now.
Okay.
Let's say you earn that ticket. You earn that position. People are like, we want Daniel Mercury as our governor. And you're actually elected. So something's working in the system. How will you ensure that the ballot box is protected?
Oh, I love that question. Thank you for asking that. One of the first things that we need to do that a lot of people don't address and that we can actually start doing now, so I will tell to your audience, is you can actually start forcing the hand of your county clerk registrar's office by engaging in new policy that will force them to have to purge the voter roll yearly. What that means is that if you purge the voter roll, it's going to force everybody to come back in and re-register. Well, I got news for you. Dead people can't come re-register. Illegal aliens aren't likely to make their presence known, nor do they want to. And it also has to reset the system. So if we're stuck with a system and somebody like me, unfortunately, does not get in, this is still a way that you can fight back that forces the machines to have to regulate themselves per a new voter registry roll by county. And when that's known, they can't inflate it. This is the whole reasoning why, or one of the primary reasons why we have the open borders policy, is to inflate the numbers. And when they inflate the numbers, they inflate voter roll. In fact, there are a number of Democrats who are at the assembly level and the Senate level that send their own people from their office to go down to the border and actually sit there and sign people up who are still in the waiting process, whether they're seeking asylum or anything else for that matter. They're already getting them registered. They're getting them their money. They're handing them the phones, and they're sending them out into all the other areas that they know that maybe they don't have enough of a reach in. So this is what they're doing, and they tell them vote Democrat. So when you purge the voter roll, it forces everybody to come back in, and it also forces people who want to participate in their government. If you don't want to participate, then you don't have a say. And this is one of the things that we really need to do, is that I've been trying to do, is reinvigorate people who have been who unfortunately have just lost faith into the system. They've been disenfranchised and they really don't want anything to do with it. They just feel, there's nothing that they can do. And they're just going to try to buy their time and do the best that they can to survive. Enough of surviving. It's time for us to fight back. It's not about just taking back, but we need to fight back and we need to crush it and crush it hard so that we never end up in this position again.
All right. So let's talk about fighting back. Let's talk about illegal immigration. Will you support local law enforcement to work alongside ICE and Homeland Security in securing our golden state of California? And are you going to get rid of the sanctuary state?
Absolutely, 100%. Here's the thing that people don't think about when it comes to the governor. We already have what's called the Constitution of the United States. That is the supreme law of the land, which means all laws must harmonize. If I look at an old court case, which a lot of people look up, which is Marbury versus Madison, which means that if there's anything repugnant to the supreme law of the land, it's null and void. That's important to understand because the courts utilize what's called stare decisis, which means to stand by things decided. So that way they don't have to reinvent the wheel when a similar case comes up, right? So it's important for an executor to understand case law, understand the judicial branch, and the vested authorities of the legislative body. So we already have title United States codes that were built off of the Constitution, which I believe it's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4, we call the Uniform of Naturalization, right? So if that's the case, then Title 8, Section 1325 is already listed out. That says that if anybody comes here illegally bypassing our designated points of entry, you are to be detained and repatriated. Done. It's that simple. Everybody comes to our country with a sad story. We all have a sad story. Many of probably our ancestors who came here, came here maybe potentially illegally, but those people who are here and where our country has drawn the line is now saying we have policies, we have a procedure, and we have a way of vetting people to come into our nation lawfully. America already lets in over 1 million people a year lawfully. That is more than most nations across the globe. And yet here we are doing this. So when it comes to the illegal entry, I'm going to ensure that we are going to cooperate with ICE. Now, when we have these sanctuary laws, anybody who has imposed, who has enforced, or who has passed egregious legislation has already violated their oath of office. In knowing this, that gives the governor ample ammunition with the AG to provide and perform the investigations, to get the indictments, and to prosecute these individuals for violating their oath of office. Why is that? Well, because you swear an oath, which is a contract. When I was in the military, you put up your hand and you say, I do solemnly swear to support and defend and uphold the Constitution first. Why? Because it's the binding contract that we, the people, made with government body, right? The consent of the governed. Power can only be granted to the government by the consent of those of us who allow for that. So when you know this and an executive knows this, then I know immediately who's already acting in violation. There's not going to be a safe haven for them. They're going to be indicted. They're going to be prosecuted, and we're going to get the perp walks that we require, we demand, and the people have asked for restitution, and I'm going to give it to them. And this is how you do it, because somebody like me actually understands the law at the executive level and understands where everybody's acting illegally, egregiously, and in a sinister manner. So again, this is how you're going to do it. And number 3, let me just say this. If you're an illegal alien and I'm the governor in this state, if you commit a heinous act, in addition to bypassing our designated points of entry, Gavin Newsom has removed the moratorium on the death penalty. That moratorium is going to be removed because it's lawful, and those people are going to be subjected to that death penalty if you not only bypass our designated points of entry, but you committed rape, you committed murder, laundering, or you've engaged in child sex trafficking. You're not going to go back. You're going to be administered to the death penalty. I am going to set a clear and concise message to every illegal: do not come to California.
Well, would you clarify for me one more time, as we're talking about the Constitution and our law and how to utilize the Constitution? And I'll tell you what, I pull out often my multiple pocket constitutions because they are tools. They are tools, and I utilize them.
Here,
you are
mine
well.
too.
I love it. You are a wealth of information in that area. So, one of the things I just asked Steve Hilton was, to my understanding, we have the United States Constitution.
Yeah.
Now, the state of California has its own constitution. At
Yes.
what point, does the United States Constitution supersede the state constitution when it comes to things like we're dealing with illegal immigration, and when it comes to things like abortion, life and death?
So again, when first and foremost, this is why we have, the supreme law of the land, right? And the Declaration of Independence that is utilized, which is a legal document to ensure that all laws harmonize. So the courts utilize the Declaration of Independence to ensure that there isn't any repugnancy. When there is a disalignment, right, you have to always go back to the supreme law of the land. So people are under the fallacy of thinking that just because a law is passed doesn't make it lawful, especially if it's egregious. And if it's egregious, well, then it's null and void. All a governor has to do is make a public nullification. There's no negotiating with the legislative body. There's no having to sit down with any judges, and there's no rewriting over on top of an already repugnant law. It's as if it didn't exist in the first place. You just need a governor who actually knows this. This is why, again, they go through the formality of presenting law only to get it to falsely operate under the color of law. This is why if you pay close attention to our legislative body, when they can't get something passed, they always tell the people, we're going to go back and we're going to work the language. What are they telling you? That they're going to change the language to change perception to pass repugnant legislation. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to provide new meaning. But the problem is that disrupts linguistical canons when they try to provide meaning to an already phrase or word that has already been accepted at the time that it was first adopted. If that is the case, then the courts are always in unison in the way that that context or that word and phrase and meaning will always provide the highest level of context. So when our own state constitution is out of alignment, it's null and void. It's stricken from the books. I don't need to negotiate with anybody. I don't need to sit down with the left or the supermajority on any level because I already know this. It's not going to be executed. So this is what we require in our state of California, is somebody who actually understands this, knows how to put it into action, and puts their backs up against the wall for engaging in fiduciary delinquency. You cannot actually sit there, draft purposely egregious language, and then throw it on the floor and debate on it when you already know that it's repugnant. That's illegal. So now they're in violation. Well, what do we do with people who break the law? You get to go to jail.
All right. So what is that first repugnant law that you will nullify when you're a governor?
That would be Article 1, Section 1.1 that has to do with abortions. When you read the first Article 1, Section 1, it says that we have the right to life. Right. It's not a privilege. Right. So let's look at the Declaration of Independence. It says that we are of the laws of nature and of nature's God entitled them. Right. So it's an entitlement. The laws of nature and of nature God provides to a man and a woman the natural occurring environment of XXXY chromosomes that at the moment of consummation, that is the right to life, which means the life in the womb has rights. And it is the job of government to ensure the right to life prevails, not infringe upon it, not interfere into it. And it is not a woman's right to choose. Unfortunately, it's not how it goes, because that life in the womb has separate brainwaves, separate heartbeats. It is the natural occurring environment for consummation for the female to be the carrier of the child. And even if the child is born, it still requires a human touch, a human hand to nurture the child into development until the child becomes an adult. So our laws are designed to protect the natural occurring environment, which is why they put "and of the laws of nature and of nature's God." When you understand this and you understand the Declaration of Independence and you understand where things are egregious, it's very simple. So again, that's going to be the first one. It's going to be stricken from the books. You're not going to be able to, we're not going to be a sanctuary abortion state. That's not going to happen.
I'll just tell you, this is not a question that I had planned, but I'm going to tell you what's there for me right now. Are we a democracy or a republic?
No, we are a constitutional republic, so much so that our forefathers put that into the Constitution under, I believe it's Article 4, Section 4, that says that all states shall ensure that we ensure a republic form of government. Now, I've heard a lot of times this sort of we're a democratic society in such a way that we're a representative democracy. That's not true. That comes from a quote, if I'm not mistaken, from, I believe it was Hamilton, who in the Federalist Papers stipulated that he asked the question because after 1776 and 1777, he said, do we garner into becoming a representative democracy? It was a question. And it wasn't until 10 years later between the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers that we finally came to the First Continental Congress and realized, hey, we are going to be a constitutional republic, and it meant that God-given endowments come first, and then government needs come last, and then you never run the state like a business because it gets around the laws of nature and of nature's God. When you live in a democracy and you hear candidates or anybody else who say, well, we're losing our democracy, good, because a democracy puts government needs first. It puts the individual rights last. They remove God entirely, and then they run the state like a business so that they can continue to tax you without representation in such a way that this is exactly how they can double dip, triple dip, quadruple dip, and people leave the state.
Wow. All right. All right. All right. As a constitutionalist, you advocate for a strict interpretation of the U.S. Constitution, like we're hearing, and limited government. California faces complex challenges like housing affordability, wildfire management, and a projected $68 billion budget deficit in 2025-26. How would you apply your constitutionalist principles to address these state-specific issues while balancing the need for effective governance and public services? And what specific policies would you propose to uphold individual liberties while tackling these crises?
Well, that's a big question. So let me see if I can break this down in so many different ways. So when you talk about individual liberties, again, an executor should look at court edicts. We should look at corpus juris secundum. We should look at American jurisprudence. These are court cases. When you look at American jurisprudence 2D section 98, I believe it talks about when there's an emergency that government has no ability or right to actually remove or impinge upon the Constitution and the state constitution when rights are secured. So when that is the case, that means it's government's job to work around any kind of state of emergency, whether it's earthquake, wars, floods, pandemics. They have no authority to infringe upon the right of the people. Their sole job is per the Declaration of Independence, which means that to secure these rights, well, which rights? Unalienable rights. You got to read the sentence before that. Governments are instituted among men by the consent of the governed. So now that we understand this, now we can get into a policy, which is what every candidate and every representative should start off with, which is the Constitution and the state constitution. And wherever there's a disalignment, they don't go down that path. So you have to look into, okay, so let's talk about homelessness. If we talk about homelessness, then you have to understand first and foremost, why is it being perpetuated? And that is because policy perpetuates the homelessness so that they can engage in profiteering off of them. So what happens is our local municipalities, our major cities, San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, where most of the homelessness is just outlandish, can claim a crisis. And what that means is they can go to the state, and the state can go to the federal government, or the city can go, or the county can go to the federal government, and they can request more federal funding due to a crisis. That money then gets sent to them or through the state, which then, of course, goes through the governor's office, and then it gets allocated out through maybe some sort of bond that goes to the county, like they just recently did with Los Angeles, and then yet they only got 500 of the over 90,000 homeless off the street. Where'd that money go? Because there's no fiscal oversight committee, the governor can stop that and prevent them from profiting off of the homeless. That then forces their hand to have to get the vagrants off the street in a more humane manner, which means they can no longer prevent other nonprofit charitable organizations who don't require anything but to just simply go in and help the homeless, who already work in conjunction with city councils in many counties that I've already researched that have a memorandum of understanding agreement that get the homeless off during certain times of the year, hot weather, cold weather, and rain. They also have an agreement to make sure that they go around and basically take a census to ensure who has mental instability, who are veterans, who are the people who are just down on their luck, and they allocate these individuals to get them to the locations that they require. But government, corrupt government, doesn't want that because there's profit to be made. And this is why it's perpetuated. And now that I've discovered this and explored this as a governor, that's going to end. So that's one thing that we can do. And then standardize that in the state constitution on how we're going to handle homelessness so that there can be no longer profit to be made off of them. Number two, we also have Section 8 housing. We need to gut that and rewrite it so that way it's a benefit to work with those vacancies. I did the homework on this. I was a real estate student, and I spoke to countless real estate investors and moguls who own tons of property and vacancies. There are over 80,000 vacancies just in Los Angeles alone. There are already over 600 agencies and organizations that already have their own money that want to help out the homeless because of the funding they get from those people, good people in the state of California that can retrofit out their homes, can retrofit out their vacancies to fit the homeless and help out those who just need their medicine, people who just need to get off the street for a short time, get a job. There's already this in place, but who doesn't it benefit? It doesn't benefit government and local government. You put me in office, and this is exactly what we're going to do, not to mention the billions of dollars we put into Project Roomkey and what was it, the Interim Housing Act that did absolutely nothing. So this is one of the other things that I'm going to do that again, an executive does not need the legislative body. In fact, they're the ones in the way, and they're the ones who I'm going to strike these from the books, and they're going to have a field day. Good. Because this is what we need. It's someone who knows how to fight back and hit the ground running with good governance. This is what it takes.
Well, thank you. You just answered the question about the homelessness crisis, and you definitely delivered the innovative data-driven solutions to implement the reduction of homelessness. Excellent. Let's transition for a moment, Daniel. We were talking earlier about the right to life. Now let's talk about parental rights. So parental rights are continuing to be attacked by the legislative body, whether it's school boards, city councils, board of supervisors, and state legislature. How would you stop this attack? And can a governor lawfully intervene? Is there such a thing as parental rights?
Yes. So let's look at this again. Let's backtrack. First, to answer your question, is there such a thing as parental rights? 100%. Yes, it's in the Declaration of Independence. Again, that is the foundation to the Articles of Confederation. You can't debate me on that. I don't care what anybody else says. Go back, read a book. So let's look at the Declaration of Independence. Where was our forefathers coming from, right? When you look at the Declaration of Independence, they mention God 4 times. Well, where do they mention God 4 times? The Creator, right? Giving us certain unalienable rights, the laws of nature and of nature's God, and of course, the judge of the world that they adhere to, and divine providence. So God has been mentioned 4 times. Which God are they talking about? Well, you have to look at the Bible. That requires some of our people who are elected to know the Bible, because this is really what our Constitution was based off of, because out of the 56 of our forefathers, I believe all of them went to seminary school. So when you look at the judge of the world, I think it's in Acts 17:31 that says that Jesus has been appointed by God to be the judge of the world because he defeated death. So now we know that our forefathers were talking about Jesus. So now where does conservatism truly come from? The Bible. So now when we look at what they were talking about, the laws of nature and of nature's God is where parental rights is what they're talking about. Government did not consummate with a man and a woman. As far as I'm concerned, that didn't happen. This is why they're trying to change the language by adding new pronouns and definitions to a gender, right? Not sex, but they split hairs. But yet, even within the LGBTQ plus community, you know, they have LGB. B stands for bisexual. So even within their own acronym, they're identifying 2. So again, it's nonsense. So when you look at that, then you know that the laws have to harmonize with that. And this is where their rights come from, is that when the parents demand from their school boards, board of supervisors, city councils, well, what gives them this right to even say any of this? Well, all I got to do is look at the state constitution under Article 1, Section 3, where it says that the people have the right, not privilege, right to instruct and consult their representatives. So then why are they getting away with it? It's because nobody knows any better. They don't understand how to fight back. But as an executive level, I can intervene now because they have not only violated the Brown Act, which is written in the California State Constitution, they have also violated Article 1, Section 3, which now puts these people, again, under investigation. The AG has over 5,000 lawyers here in the state of California. We're not using them for the benefit of the people. We're using them for the benefit of our government. This is why I tell people I have no interest in being a governor for the government, but I have every interest in being a governor for the people, the people's governor.
All right, let's go even deeper. Let's talk about the education and workforce. So California's public schools face teacher shortages and declining test scores. While tech and green energy sectors demand skilled workers, What reforms will you propose to improve K through 12 education and align community colleges with workforce needs? And how will you fund these without burdening taxpayers already stretched by the high costs?
Well, again, another great question. First and foremost, we need to abolish the CTA for collective bargaining and holding our students hostage year in and year out because they want more pay, yet they provide less, and they don't educate, they indoctrinate. So there's a procedure that we're not adhering to when it comes to education. In fact, one of the things that actually is supposed to be year throughout all K through 12 is the United States Constitution and the state constitution is supposed to be taught in depth as the years go on. It's now become an elective. So that's going to change under my watch. Number two is we need to provide school choice to all parents. In other words, what does that look like? That means that we need to ensure that schools are competing with each other. Competition is what brings out the best in any kind of industry, especially, when it comes to the market industry, the open, fair, and free market, the way it's supposed to be competitive. And when parents can choose to go to a school, that forces teachers to get back to the subject matters that they were designed to teach: history, arithmetic, reading, writing. So when you allow for school choice, again, this is not something that needs to be law. This is something that is, because again, it's a right. It's a parental right. And when states try to come up with ways to sort of corner parents to have to, go to school in one particular area or environment, if a parent wants to travel 50 miles to a school that they want their child to go to, and there's open vacancies or enough before the school hits its max capacity, that parent has every right, especially if they already filled out the forms within the timely manner. Under my administration, that's one of the things we're going to do. And one of the other things that we're going to do to increase school competition is we are going to give a tax-free, lower taxes for all parents who homeschool. I'm a homeschool parent.
Wow.
So in our state, I don't trust our unfortunately, like I said earlier, our educational infrastructure at all because of the indoctrination, right? So my son, I love my son. He is a brilliant young man. In fact, my wife, God bless her soul, she is, I got to say something real quick about my wife. They always say that, behind every good man, there's a great woman.
Right.
And when it comes to my wife, I always say that is such an understatement. She is an amazing wife. I have been blessed with such an intelligent woman. She is really my heart, and she has just, God put her in my life and blessed me with just, words can't express the beauty that I have I see in my children and what she has provided for me in my home. And she is a genius of a woman. She truly educates them. I come in as the principal, when they kind of act out, I come in and I provide the discipline and they kind of get back in line. But my son is in 7th grade and he passed nearly at an 11th grade level in his math.
Wow.
This is what we're missing. And it's because we are not providing this to the people of our state. Again, this is something a governor can do outside of the legislative body because it's already constitutional. When you understand this stuff is easy. When we hear other candidates who are like, well, I don't really know what to do, we're going to have to, adhere to the hearts of the people. It's already written there. Our forefathers were so genius. Now we just have a bunch of people in there, and I hate to say this, all they're doing is screwing it up. And I'm going to set that right. And lastly, we're going to research and support instructional practices to assist in enhancing teacher and effectiveness when it comes to education. We have a lot of infrastructure going on with our educational system, but the problem is we don't adhere to best practices. We don't actually research that. When we did at some point in time, I think it was like 50 years ago, where universities were going around to some of the schools to see the kind of results in certain subject matters, whether it was math or English or reading comprehension. What tactics did some of these school teachers use that really resonated with kids of cultural backgrounds? And why aren't we adhering to that? Because I'll tell you right now, and you can take this for what it's worth, is when you have an uneducated society, you have an easier society to control. That is a Marxist tactic. And if you don't know Marxism or Karl Marx or anything about his background, he spoke on the abolition of family and the abolition of property. There's a whole reason why it's so hard to, the zonings and the permitting here in the state of California is erroneous, and why we have a housing crisis is because they don't want families. It's an abolition of family. They need to get rid of it. It's a Marxist tactic. Right? Saying this goes with our education. If you're increasingly a critical thinker, you're a problem. You're a thorn in everyone's side. They don't want that. You're not as easily as controlled. You will be a problem for them. This is why they keep dumbing down the industry and the educational infrastructure. That's going to stop easily on my watch.
Mm. Daniel, we got to hear just a moment ago how amazing your wife is. We got to hear a little bit about your son. Now, we didn't get to hear about your daughter yet. Your family has faced significant adversity with your daughter's battle with leukemia.
Yes.
What key lessons have you learned from this deeply personal experience? And how do you believe these insights would shape your approach to governing California, particularly in areas like healthcare policy, community support, and leadership under pressure?
Well, first, my daughter. My daughter is my new hero. I
Mm.
have witnessed her go through chemo. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Love her. She has truly she has fought through so much, and every day, the strength of a child just, it fires me up to fight for my state and for parents. And to watch her go through chemotherapy, to watching her lose weight, watching her lose her hair, her skin pigmentation, and yet somehow still hold a smile through all of that, has just shown me the strength and the fervor of the human spirit and community. And so many people came out to support my family. The love that people gave it, people I didn't even know, came out and cooked us dinner. They donated to our cause. They bought presents for my kid. And this is one of the key factors that keeps me motivated and running, was because there's so many wonderful people in the state of California. They are well worth the fight. They are, people say, Daniel, I've literally been at this for almost 7 years. And I don't find that, by chance. I think 7 is the number of completion in the Bible. I started running for Congress back in, 2019 for the 25th district. And here I am. By the time this race is over, I will hit the 7-year mark almost to the day. And it just tells me that I'm on this path for a clear and concise reason. And, when it comes to, healthcare, I'll tell you right now, the California Medical Board is the first group that I'm also going to go after on day one. They are going to be fired. They have done nothing but, engage in coercion, malpractice, medical propaganda, and child abuse, all appointed by Gavin Newsom. They are not going to be in that seat any longer. In fact, they all have ties to the WHO and the CDC. You name it. They are a pay-for-play group. They are going to be gone. They are going to be not just investigated, because there's already investigations on them. We are going to see them live the rest of their days in a prison cell. I guarantee it. But we're going to provide more data to unnecessary medical waste to the Accountable Care Organization. We're going to ensure that we engage in decisive quality improvements. And here's one of the other things that we're not doing that we need to open the door. Again, this is not something that necessarily the executive has to negotiate, is the fact that we can open up the door to allow for competition when it comes to our health insurance. Why aren't we allowing for people to have insurance out of state? I'll tell you right now, I work in, part of the entertainment industry, and you always have to have, insurance for a production and so on, but they allow for insurances from out of state. Why aren't we allowing for out-of-state insurances with healthcare? If they can provide the same coverage, what does it matter? It's because it provides competition, and it lowers the amount that people would have to pay on yearly or whenever, or they can have a wider range of hospitals or doctors that they want to choose from. Another thing I went around to countless doctors during the COVID-19 lockdown, and many of them are already engaging in allowing for people who cannot afford medical care, that they utilize their business practices to allow to at least 20% of their clientele to be free of charge, because they are just doing it out of the goodness of their heart. Why aren't we tax incentivizing that? That will get so many people off the street. That'll open up the doors of opportunity for people who are struggling from, having to go through the rigmarole of insurances. My daughter, I have 2 daughters. I have 2 beautiful daughters. And I will say this too, she had a choking incident, and thankfully, again, my wife is a nurse and was on that, like white on rice. But it was amazing is they had to take my daughter to the hospital that was designated for the EMT to get them there. They went to the wrong hospital. And then they had to turn around and go to the correct hospital.
During a choking incident?
During a choking incident, right, of all times.
There's no time to find another hospital.
luckily there was, luckily everything just worked in our favor. God, thank God.
Wow.
But now we're getting bombarded with the fact that they made the mistake. And so people have to figure out, how do you deal with these insurances when the problem was on their end? You have to talk to the drivers, you have to talk to their insurance departments and so on. And there's so much rigmarole where people don't understand how this works. And so they end up having to pay an exorbitant amount of fine. And so they took our $9,000 bill and they dropped it down to like 900. And then my insurance company was like, no, they have proven everything. It's going to be zero. Right.
Wow.
But it took weeks to do this. People don't have time to do this.
That's
and this is why we need better insurance companies and to work with the hospitals. And we need competition. We need doctors to be able to have a tax break when they allow, out of the goodness of their heart, to adhere to people who are down on their luck or can't pay for certain things, but they're willing to do that. Let's let them do that. And then lastly, what about a health savings account? We punish people for actually putting money aside for a health savings account. Why? That releases the burden off of the state when it comes to our Medi-Cal. What are we thinking here? It's because we're dealing with a bunch of ignoramuses that don't know what they're doing, and they're trying to figure out how they can generate more revenue for the state.
Wow. So speaking of ignoramuses, the COVID-19 pandemic exposed distrust in government institutions. So some of your past campaign rhetoric suggested skepticism of state mandates.
Yes.
How will you rebuild public trust in health policies while balancing individual freedoms and collective safety, especially in preparing for future crises like a pandemic or a climate-driven disaster?
Well, one of the first things is, and I tell everybody this, everyone's going to have to be educated, and we're going to need to require our health departments, our state agencies, commissions and boards, which we have over 500 to 600 state agency commissions and boards that deal in, agriculture, finances, health, transportation. So, I mean, it's erroneous how many there are and how much red tape they put in there. But one of the things that I helped my wife out with was, and a number of other people, and I did this without, again, being in office, and that was to show people understanding the laws. This is why I said in the video, if you don't know the law, there is no law. If you don't know your rights, you have no rights. I will drag this state people kicking and screaming to ensure that you understand your rights, because your status in a constitutional republic is above government at all times. Once you know that, now you can start engaging in a trust factor, because you know the limitation to their power. But you can't do that until somebody actually is willing to show you and hand it to you freely and want nothing in return. I want nothing in return. I want to educate you. And so my wife and I went down the painstaking to prevent her from getting the COVID-19 jab and getting fired. And we knew the law. And we went painstakingly through the state constitution and statutes and mandates and regulations. And here's something that people need to understand, that statutes and mandates and regulations, if they supersede his law, which is what the Constitution is built off of, then we can never have government by consent.
His law? Would you clarify his law?
His law, meaning God's law, meaning Jesus.
Okay.
So if mandates, regulations supersede his law, then how are we ever going to have government by consent? You can't. It's impossible. And this is what we're going to get back to, is government by consent. And in doing this and knowing so, my wife was one of two people who got a religious exception indefinitely. And I had her sign it with UCC 1207, which means without prejudice. So when two lawyers get together and they have a conversation and they're on the opposing side, they always say to each other, hey, this conversation is without prejudice. What does that mean? It means they can't hold each other accountable to anything that they say in that meeting. They're not liable. So that means when she signed it without prejudice, it meant that once they filed it, they can never come back and they can never say, well, we changed our mind. No, because now she can contest it and she can maintain her job and still not take the shot, even if a new pandemic arises. Done. This is the power that I want to put back into the people's hand, and what I'm going to do, not what I'm thinking about doing. And I'm going to reveal this county by county, city by city. We have 58 counties, 483 cities, and roughly a little over 58 unincorporated cities. These people, everybody in the state of California, I'm going to wake you up. I'm going to put that power back in your hand. I want my state back, and I want you to have that power back. And this is how we're going to do it.
This is about taking our state back, taking our California back. What are you willing to compromise as governor? And Daniel, what are you willing to not compromise Or let me reframe that actually. What are you unwilling to compromise? So, what are you willing to compromise, and what are you unwilling to compromise?
In short, I'm not willing to compromise on anything in the sense that when it obfuscates or it subverts the right or the will of the people, plain and simple. I have no intentions in negotiating with the supermajority in this state because they're all criminals. Many of them are criminals and have engaged in criminal misconduct. They have engaged in fiduciary delinquency, abuse of power. Last time I checked, when you negotiate with a criminal, that makes you a criminal. And I have no intentions in doing that. I have every intentions in ensuring that accountability resonates the way it's supposed to, which is what a chief executive is supposed to do. And that is, I will not compromise on securing the rights of the people, on ensuring that the will of the people remain and their status above government at all times, and their ability to control government, which is the way it's supposed to be, that they have rights, and rights can never be turned into privileges. And you cannot sit there and take a liberty and then charge a license and fee thereof. We call that extortion. It doesn't work that way. I will not compromise on that. And I most certainly will not compromise on anybody trying to change the language in order for them to pass something just for a business deal because they did something behind closed doors, out of the eyes, out of the sight of the people. That will not happen on my watch.
I got that. I got that. Daniel, there's 2 questions I have remaining for you this evening.
Please.
And one of those questions is, it is about life, and it's about our ability to have water. Because if we do not have water, we do not have life. Tell us what you're going to do to provide we, the people in the state of California, the flow of water to our agriculture, the flow of good, healthy, life-giving water to our taps, and the accessibility for we, the people, to have that water at a very low cost.
That's such a great question. I really like this interview. This is amazing. I love this debate.
I'm so
You're
glad.
asking such great questions when it comes to water. This was a hard one for me when it came to water. I'm going to keep it as simple as possible to not get into too depth with this. But first and foremost, one of the hardest things, and I know it was a difficult thing for me to come up with. First, stop dumping it into the ocean. I know that was a tough one. It's a hard one. We dump 20 to 30 metric tons a day. The basin right now, as of this last raining storm, is full. What people don't know is a lot of our water and power and so on continuously raise the rates. Well, here's the thing. Water is innate. It means it's part of the natural occurring environment, the laws of nature and of nature's God. So that means that government can't create water. Why? Because it's already here. They didn't make it. God made that. So it's innate. They can cultivate it, they can regulate it, and they can ship it around and move it, but they can't create it. So why are we paying more money on water when we are in plenty? The supply has gone up and the demand remains the same. So it hasn't changed that we need more. It's just we were charging more and forcing people to engage in, conservation. So what were we missing here? Now that water is plentiful, why are we charging more? So under my administration, we're not going to charge more when we're not in a drought, and we're going to stop dumping things into the ocean. Number 3, we do not adhere to the backlogs of our current water infrastructure pipelines that we're using today. So I love hearing about creating all of these enterprises and these new, technologies to collect water from the mountains and so on and so forth. That's great. Or maybe even building, desalination plants, which we will do under my administration here in the state of California. Israel has 3 desalination plants, and they are the largest exporter of fresh water. Why aren't we doing that? We have a whole ocean next to us. That would create jobs. That would create fresh water. That would increase our agriculture. I mean, I can go on and on about that. But we're not doing is we have a current infrastructure that we're using right now. There are backlogs, which is part of the reason why we had the Oroville spill, which is just a couple of years ago. And it was because when you look at, the reports on the weather, when you look at during certain seasons, they didn't adhere to them. And so the dam broke. And then we have current smaller canals and channels that are also not being adhered to with the damages. And so they shut the waters off. And then they don't even actually make the repairs. So what are we missing here? It's because they're causing corrupt government a problem. They're forcing the people to rely on government so then they can come in as the heroes. No, that's not how it works. Those backlogs are going to be adhered to under my administration immediately. We're going to make sure that we get into the reports, and that we're going to open up job opportunities for people who are actually engaged, who have the engineering background, who understand the infrastructure that needs to be adhered to so that people can get water. Here's the other thing too that we're not doing. We're not encouraging our rural areas that take water from the major metropolitans and the pipeline to go out to them to engage in water conservation or retrofit out their homes for collecting rainwater. We're punishing them for doing that. That's illegal. They have every right, because it's the law of nature. It's a nature given property that we can use for life. Water is needed for everything in order for us to sustain life. And the California State Constitution under Article 10 and 10A talks about water being used, all natural resources, for the good of the state. You can't use it for the good of the state when you turn off the pipes, you don't adhere to the backlogs, and you dump the water out. And then you don't allow people to cultivate the water on their own so that they can sustain themselves if they're in a rural area. So this is all going to change under my watch. And then lastly, what people don't realize is, why isn't the amount coming down? And that is because there are shareholders to these companies. So they don't want to take a pay cut when they are raising the amount. And now that the supply is above what it requires to be, and we have plenty of it, why don't you lower the price down? It's because the shareholders don't want to lose their current income that they're receiving, or capital that they're gaining from all of us having to pay out more. Again, that's going to end. So this is not a legislative process. This is an executive process. So once you understand this, it's so easy to get back to common sense. You just need an executive who understands what it means in putting California first, America first. And Californians are ready, and I have seen this up and down the state, to return California to a golden state of mind. They are ready for this.
We've heard common sense a lot today, so I'm going to say cheers to common sense.
Amen. But lastly, can I say this too?
Yes.
We've also have removed God out of our lives.
Yes.
And when you remove God and you run the state like a business, and you force people to have to meet on a profit margin when it's irrelevant if it's made in bad faith or it's an exploitation of the contract clause, that void has to be filled with something. We are witnessing this every day when they attack our children, when they don't pass laws that protect the innocent, when they sit there and they protect the pedophile and the predator and not the child or the victim. We are in a backwatered system right now because we have removed God, and the blessings of this nation have been removed. This is why our forefathers wrote that into the Constitution, why they put that in the Declaration of Independence. This is why they say that they wanted to bestow the blessings to themselves, the blessings of liberty to themselves and to their posterity. You can't give those blessings over when you remove God. That was a covenant that they made to God for this nation. And we wondering why we have lost so much is because we have failed to adhere to God's law. This is why you read in, I think it's in Hosea, where he says, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Yes. But you got to keep reading, because he says that you are no priest to me because you have forgotten the law of thy God. I will also forget your children. And tell me if we haven't seen our children being forgotten because we have turned them, we have over-sexualized them, we have indoctrinated them, we have made them targets of sick, seditious ways of life that people don't want to be held accountable. They want to live a reprobate mind. We need someone that can see this. I see this daily, and I'm ready to fight this.
I got that. I got that loud and clear. And I believe we got that loud and clear, Daniel. Lastly, this piggybacks into your book, Lucifer, Zenith, Corrupting Nature's God Through Government Deception. You have a call to action for we the people in that book. Would you like to share that call to action for every single one of us today to complete today's interview?
I'll try to summarize it briefly. Is the call to action is to first understand how we got here and how we got into this mess in the first place. Number two, how we fight back and what we can do to push back at the local, state, and federal level. And number three, I realize that all of this ties into the Bible and biblical prophecy, more so the four horsemen of the apocalypse and the area of industry that those four horsemen affect that we're witnessing right now. And if you want to be awake and you want to understand this, read that book, read it. And I always tell people this too. If I get we're on hard times, if you cannot afford it, please go to my website for danielforcalgovernor.com. Again, danielforcalgovernor.com. That's FORCAL governor.com, and go to the contact page and general info. Send me an email and I will send you, give me your address or address that you want me to send the book, and I will send you a free copy. If you can't afford it, on the merchandise page, it'll take you to the Amazon link. Send me that. It's not about the money. It's about the information. I want you empowered. I need you empowered, because I'll tell you right now, I never wanted to be a politician. I loathe politics. It's such a visceral environment. There's so many backstabbers and liars and swindlers and just deceitful people. This is not what I set out for my life, but you never know the direction that God wants you to go in. But eventually, even if I were to be the governor, I have to step out of the arena and get back to the private sector of this world. If that's the case, I want it to be as flourishing and living in prosperity as we can make it. That's the point in being in office. So we have too many people who are getting in office pining to wear the crown of leadership, and not enough people who are pining to wear the shoes of servanthood. I am not here to lead you. You are the kings and you are the queens and the princes and princesses of this land. I am your servant. I am here to serve you. I want to serve you. I'm not here to fight for your civil rights, because civil rights are immunity and privileges given out by the government. I'm here to fight for your God-given unalienable rights. And I'm not here to do the right thing, because you and I are never going to agree on that. But our forefathers laid it out for us. I'm going to do the God-given constitutionally right thing. And I guarantee you that is exactly what you're going to get if you put me in office.
Daniel Mercury for governor. Daniel, thank you so much for the powerful vision that you gave us today. And I want to send everybody to, let me clear my voice here, and danielforcalgovernor.com. That's Daniel, you can see it down below, for calgovernor.com. Go check out his book. I've been reading the book, danielforcalgovernor.com. Daniel, God bless you, Godspeed, and we will see you on the other side. And before you go, do we have your commitment to be with us in person at the California Face-Off Showdown, November 1st?
Absolutely. I will be there without a doubt. I will leave open all of November, no matter what. So in case there's any changes, I will make sure that I am there. 100%. Count on it.
Fantastic. That's Daniel Mercury. Daniel, thank you so much. Wow, guys. What an amazing interview. Dang, I feel so blessed and so privileged to be in this seat right now. Bear with us, guys. We're not done yet. We have one more powerful interview, Kobe Markham. Now, the Bible says the first shall be last and the last shall be first. So Kobe Markham is going to be joining us in just a moment, and you want to be here for this interview. Everybody today has brought the fire. We are igniting, we the people of California. This is your voices being heard today. These questions are coming from you, we the people. President Trump says we are giving power back to we the people. Take it, California. It's yours to have. Stand in the gap. These forerunners, these mighty warriors that are running for governor right now are there to represent you. So you make sure that your voice is heard. I am so excited for the next round. We're going to take a moment to thank our sponsors who make the Take Your Power Back show possible. And I got to tell you, it is because of our sponsors that we're really here today. So I want to share our first sponsor with you right now. Our first sponsor that I want to say a big thank you to is Patriots Buying American. That's right. We Patriots, what do? We buy American. We're not buying China. No. All right. I know some of us do purchase from China, and Trump is working on all that right now, but we've got to buy American. We've got to support American businesses. The best way to do that is to take your everyday shopping and get it out of Procter & Gamble. Get it out of Johnson & Johnson and Unilever and Coca-Cola. We hear MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. We hear RFK bringing to light the toxins and poisons that are in those everyday products. Guys, those are heavy metals going into your bloodstream. What we can control is what goes in our bodies, what is on us, and what we are surrounded with. If we're going to add years to our life and life to our years, then we've got to take our power back by making the switch to Patriots Buying American. Our resource, USA Today just named them America's best brand in 2025. Well, lo and behold, they've been around for 40 years and they've been doing it, making the products that are just better, safer, and a lot less expensive. So go today to patriotsbuyingamerican.com, put your information in, and one of our experts, wellness experts, will reach out and tailor it to your needs. And that is patriotsbuyingamerican.com. And I'm going to toss this up there for you so that you can visually see it. And that is patriotsbuyingamerican.com. Patriot owned, American made, no toxins, superior products, nutrition, beauty, home, over 400 products, whether it's babies or teenagers or skincare, you name it. Real solutions for real problems. patriotsbuyingamerican.com. And our next sponsor that we want to say a big thank you to again is Patriot TV Beef. Yes, we are on the Patriot TV platform and we are so excited. Well, Patriot TV Beef has aligned with a resource that is never, ever hormoned, that is never, ever antibiotic, and by golly, no mRNA. Never had it, never will. And I got to tell you, it is the best beef I've ever eaten. When we finish up the interview today, I'm telling you, I'm having a ribeye, and the ribeyes are amazing. So you want to have good beef that doesn't have Zeranol and toxins and poisons in it from that same company that has been around for 40 years and are cattle experts, then I want you guys to go check it out for yourself. Take a look. Go to, it's popping up right now. You're going to go to patriotbeef.com. Actually, let me pop up this one. I think I like this one a whole lot better. patriottvbeef.com. That's patriottvbeef.com. Better beef, better life. Go get your beef today. And a big thank you to Patriot TV Beef and a big thank you to Patriots Buying American. All right. And without further ado, we have another segment coming up right now that is going to be a game changer. So we're going to bring it on. It is Colby Markham. So who is this Colby Markham, do you ask? Maybe you haven't heard a lot about Colby, but Colby Markham is a warrior. And for those of you who are just joining this segment of today's Take Your Power Back California Governor Face-Off Round 2, I want to welcome you. We are cranking up the heat right now because we are in round 2. Round 1 was an incredible success. We had Sheriff Chad Bianco, Leo Zaki, Leo Naranjo, and this interview shook up the entire state. That show created a massive stir. After 27 interviews of Sheriff Bianco, some hitting 1 million views, Sheriff Chad Bianco made headlines for the first time on MSN, covering his controversial interview right here and the concerns of we the people with real questions that were asked to him, proving our platform is waking up California. Our good friend and fearless warrior, General Flynn, says we are the digital warriors. So thank you to all of our warriors who are live streaming today's show. Now, with President Trump back in the White House, Republicans have a historic chance to take our power back, not just in DC, but right here in the Golden State. Tonight, we're diving into round 2 of the California Governor Face-Off, featuring exclusive one-on-one interviews. We just did Steve Hilton, Daniel Mercury, and now we've got Colby Markham. Expect the hard-hitting questions and unfiltered insights into their bold plans to restore California's greatness. So grab your faith, your courage, and your patriotic fire. Let's take our power back together. I like to say, take our California back. Joining us for the third segment today is Colby Markham. Colby is a business owner and a general contractor in construction who values your hard-earned tax dollars and is ready to build a California that works. Bringing his fire to this face-off today, before we bring him into the room, it would only make sense that we do it the right way, that we do it with an well-deserved introduction. And we're going to do that by sharing Colby's campaign video today. Let's bring it on in and let's play that video.
Markham. I'm running for governor of California. I am currently 46 years old. I'm blessed by God to have 4 graduate degrees. One is an MBA, Master's in Business Administration from Pepperdine University here in California. Another is a Master's of Science and Business Management from Southern Methodist University in Texas. Another is a graduate degree in cybersecurity from the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. And the fourth one is a graduate degree in U.S. National Security from the Institute of World Politics in Washington, D.C. I'm originally born and raised in Texas. I live in California now. I moved to California in 2019. I am a construction contractor, and there are a lot of things that I want to do for California. But the most important thing that I can share with you about this video, if you take nothing else away from this video, is that I care about you. And my life is a life of service to others, whether it's me serving as a contractor or whatever else God may have me do and helping others. I'm a soldier for Christ, and I go where he sends me, and I do my best to do what he tells me to do. And God's word and what I read in the Bible very strongly influence the decisions that I make in managing my business operations and also in how I interact with others. And God tells me and us in the Bible to be kind to one another, to treat each other with respect, and to treat others the way that we would want to be treated. And much of my life has been spent working without a college degree. I did not go back to college until around age 30. So I spent about 10 years.
Hang on one second. Let's clarify that and clean that up. Not sure why we're getting stuck right now. Might just be the Wi-Fi. Let's refresh that. Give that just a second. All right, guys. Kobe, what we're going to do right now is we're just going to bring you in, because you have, I want those words to be from your heart. Welcome to the Take Your Power Back show. We are so excited to have you here for round 2 of the California Governor Face Off. And let's make sure you are unmuted. Hello.
Check 1, 2.
Oh, check 1, 2. It's so good to see you. Thank you. I want you to know that, I know you've been sitting in the back room. You've gotten a lot of insight. Good water, by the way. We've just learned the importance of good water, right? So you got to hear both interviews. And oftentimes we can feel like, gosh, I was on the back end. But sometimes it's so good to be able to really hear what the others that are running for governor really stand for with this lineup of questions. I want you to know that today's questions were specifically chosen by we the people. That is, we the people of the state of California. They sent in questions, and this is the voice of we the people, because our goal is to give we the people back their voice. Because whose country is it? Whose state is it? It's ours. It's ours. It's ours. That's right. All right. So Kobe, questions first up, and we're going to go through this pretty swiftly. Now, we learned about your extensive academic background, master's, wowza. So your extensive academic background combined with your practical experience as a business owner and licensed general contractor in the construction industry, how do these diverse qualifications in real world expertise prepare you to address California's complex challenges, such as economic recovery, housing affordability, and public safety, while upholding constitutional principles as a governor?
We want to make a slight correction. I'm not yet licensed. I'm working on my license, but I am a multi-trade contractor. I think the challenges that are that California is facing in terms of the cost of housing is not so much related to construction. It's more about the red tape and the environmental impact studies and delayed permits. And it's a lot of administrative things that interferes. And I think that when big government, and big government can be at the state level, starts meddling with free markets, that is what creates distorted economic incentives for property owners, landowners, builders, developers, real estate investors, that interferes with the cost of living in California. And that's my answer.
Okay, I got that. Thank you for that answer. Well, let's talk about, the political outsider status. Well, you're positioned yourself as an outsider, challenging the political establishment, but California's government is a complex machine requiring insider knowledge to navigate. How will you quickly master the legislative and bureaucratic landscape to deliver results? And who are your key advisors that you're going to be relying on to avoid being outmaneuvered by seasonal Sacramento insiders?
If Mercury did not get elected, probably he'd be one of them, because I mean, he was just firing on all cylinders. Yes. Wow. Mm-hmm. What a great asset to have. If he didn't get elected, that would be an amazing asset. On a bigger picture scale, I think that building relationships with all parties that have a stake in the decisions being made, I think that's one of the most important things. They have to understand that I'm looking out for their interests. And there's a combination of that. If I got elected, there's a combination of that while also balancing that with looking out for the best interests of California residents, in addition to looking out for the best interests of businesses who may not be based in California, but they do business inside California. And I think when I approach that, if I got elected, with humility, and asked them, how can I help you achieve your goals while also looking out for the best interests of the people who've asked me to help them and looking out for their best interests? I think you can meet in the middle of the road, because if I were to approach it like, okay, here's how it's going to be, well, they're going to tell me to pound sand, and they should, because that is not a diplomatic approach to finding common ground. That's my answer.
Okay, got it. So what I hear is diplomatic approach to finding common ground. And I also hear the power of unity. I love that, the fact that you brought up, Daniel and what he shared tonight and how you'd love that partnership, right? Because that is what it's going to take this state back. Is it will take the unity of we the people. So let me ask you, with your diverse expertise in national security, cybersecurity management, and construction, how will you craft a public safety strategy that tackles violent crime in urban centers like Oakland and illegal cannabis operations in rural areas like Mendocino County, while respecting local community needs and constitutional principles? Now, specifically, what measures will you propose to strengthen law enforcement capabilities and disrupt criminal networks? And how will you ensure these efforts are funded efficiently without undermining essential social services or burdening taxpayers?
I think you covered 16 topics. I'll try to.
I did. So let's start with the first. Let's craft your public, with your experience. Just give us that, with that diverse experience that you have, how will you respect the local community needs, constitutional principles? What are you going to do in this arena?
Part of it is allowing, and I don't mean that it's not interfering with law enforcement's ability to do their job, to do what they've sworn to do. California voters, for example, voted overwhelmingly in favor of Proposition 36. But that proposition needs funding. So if somebody's defunding that, it feels to me like they're thwarting the will of the people. which I personally don't care for. I detest and want to absolutely annihilate drug cartels operating in California. I want California to be one of the worst places in the world to do drugs, to manufacture drugs, to sell drugs, to traffic drugs, all of those things, because that destroys people's lives. Part of it is having the will to do what may not be popular at that time. And when somebody elects you to do a job, I think it's important to do that job without your decision making being interfered with a desire to get reelected, because then you're just there doing nothing. You're just there doing nothing. You're running a reelection campaign the whole time. And I know that there are people who would be opposed to mandatory treatment for drug rehabilitation, abstinence drug rehabilitation, which means no drugs. But I think a lot of it becomes the character of the person that gets elected as governor. I think when they care about people, there's a fire that it really comes up in their heart when they see people like drug cartels, to use an example, hurting people in California. That makes me angry personally. I take personal offense to that. And I think when you have somebody who feels that way, they're motivated to do everything that they can to create an environment where people just don't want to do that kind of stuff here. And I think they start to figure that out when their key members of their organization are no longer able to operate in California. And I can't cover all of those things in one answer.
Well, let me ask you, let's piggyback off of that. So will you bring together ICE, Homeland Security, and local law enforcement to work together to handle the cartel, the crazy amounts of fentanyl that have entered into this state, and the human trafficking that's occurring?
Yes, because I was very happy to see that President Trump, Donald J. Trump, designated foreign drug cartels as terrorist organizations, which makes them eligible for drone strikes, which I love, and that may be in foreign countries. But anybody operating in California, doing any type of drug stuff in California, my policy for me as an individual, as a registered California voter, is they're over here. They're over here. This is what they were driving. This is what they look like. Here's when they operate. Here's who they've been doing stuff with, whether it's drone footage, satellite images, cell phone tracking, whatever the maximum legal amount I'm allowed to do in that, I want to do it. But it's also important that I really respect people's privacy and I respect the law. And I believe that you have to go to the very edge of what the law allows in aggressive prosecution, but never, ever go beyond it. Never. The law is the law.
Well, speaking of the law, do you believe in the separation of church and state? If so, why or why not?
It depends. So if you look at, for example, historically, like the Church of England, and then you start blending government with a particular church, then, or a particular faith, particular denomination, a particular preacher, or something like that, things get really weird. And I think that's a bad thing. However, as a Christian, my decisions are heavily influenced by what I read in the Bible. And God tells us in the Bible, like I mentioned in the intro video, treat others the way that we want to be treated. And if I had a family member on the street doing drugs, I would want to go help them, even if they didn't want that to happen. But I also recognize that individuals in California, referring to separation of church and state,
Mm-hmm.
individuals in California make decisions for themselves that I would never make for myself, because I do not wish to live that lifestyle for myself. However, I will aggressively defend their right to live a lifestyle that is legal. Now, if somebody is doing something illegal, like a pedophile, I want to hammer them unbelievably hard. But I respect that people make their own decisions. Adults make their own decisions. I don't like the COVID lockdowns. I think they were unnecessary and unproductive. And I think it was a violation of people's rights. And that's an example of something of overstepping, egregiously overstepping. But similarly, I will defend people's rights to live lifestyles that I don't agree with. I don't want it for me, and I don't want it for my family. And if I ever have kids, I don't want it for them. But if that person has the right to do that, they have the right to do that. And I will aggressively defend their legal rights.
I got that. How would your view on the subject of the separation of church and state affect your governorship should you be elected with Muslims in California trying to implement Sharia law?
There is a difference between a religion and a political organization. And if someone is masquerading, now there could be two sides of Islam and two sides of the Muslim faith. One of them might be solely faith-based, and it has nothing to do with being radical, nothing to do with blowing anything up or setting anything on fire, nothing to do with trying to take control. Similarly, you could have the radical side of Islam that is a political organization and potentially a terrorist organization who's masquerading under the color of being a faith-based entity, and they are 100% not a faith-based entity. So I think it's very important to differentiate between those two. And I think that I would know, and voters as well would know, what type of group that is based on their behavior. And if somebody is just practicing their faith and not trying to take over government, then obviously they're a faith-based organization. And if somebody is trying to take over government, they're threatening people, they're threatening organizations, they're being disruptive, then I would categorize that as a political organization, and within the law, interact with and deal with them accordingly, if that makes sense.
Okay. So we're going to stay right here in our next round of questions because they're all kind of connected. This country and the state of California has shed so much innocent blood when it comes to abortions. Now, both candidates had this question. Running on the Republican ticket is an indication that you, Kobe, are a conservative. If that's true, do you support abortion, yes or no?
I do not support abortion. I think it's abhorrent. I can't imagine God looking down on abortion and smiling and saying, good job. I can't fathom that. But the law is the law. And as I mentioned earlier about people's lifestyles, we have to be a nation of laws and a state of laws. And every county has to abide by laws. So I abide by the law. And I think the fact that I'm capable of defending somebody's right to do something that I 100% disagree with because they have the legal right to do it shows that I am a man of law and a person of law. However, I would like to seek ways of changing California law with voter consent, whether it's a direct ballot initiative or something like that. And if I put forth a ballot initiative, think governors can't do that. But if I had a relationship with some people in the California legislature and they put that forth and I supported it, and the Californians voted that down, they said, we're going to have abortion, deal with it, we're going to vote it down. If they vote it down, then they vote it down. And I have to respect that because the law is the law. That's what I have to say about that.
Okay, I got that. And so what I'm hearing is if you have the ability, you will do what you can in your control to end this practice in the state of California and change it by the vote of the people.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's transition, and we're going to talk about affordability and economic policy right now. California is in the middle of, California's middle class is shrinking due to high taxes and living costs. Yes, we've all heard about that. There's been a great impact, especially since COVID, with the middle class, with many residents leaving for states like Texas. What specific economic policies will you implement to keep families in the golden state of California? And how will you address critics who say Republican-led cuts often benefit corporations more than individuals?
Couple of things. I just want to be extra clear. The phrase was used, keep families in California. If somebody wants to leave, they're free to go.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, somebody wants to stay. If they want to leave, they want to come back, whatever.
They're not locked in. I hear you.
No, not at all. And I mean that in a polite and courteous way.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the reasons, so there's a lot of, let me unpack that question a little bit.
Okay.
Some of the expenses that are caused in California to some degree have to do with the fact that California is a desirable place to live. And no matter what government policies or elected officials we have in a free market economy, when something's desirable, people want it. If you buy beachfront property anywhere in the United States, it's going to be more expensive than property that's not on the beach. That is not a California anomaly. The same goes for states. There are some states that more people want to live in, and there are some states that are less populated. California will always be expensive. However, when we have, speaking in terms of tax dollars, California has a spending problem. And because we have a spending problem, the only way to feed the spending problem is to tax people. And when we work on the spending problem, the state of California can tax less, which means potentially lower income taxes, potentially lower fuel taxes. And there are some things that we can control, but I think it's also important to recognize and not overpromise. I don't make campaign promises anyway, but to recognize that just California is expensive because it's so desirable. The weather's great. A lot of beautiful people here and beautiful scenery. So no matter what we do, the prices in California are not going to be as low as some of the other states. So there's a balance in there, but by creating a better business environment in California where businesses want to come here, because there's probably going to be some reshoring potentially of manufacturing that was previously in China that is coming back to the United States. We need to make California a desirable place for those businesses to land. And when those jobs, Lord willing, come back to California, then people can work at those jobs, good paying jobs, and earn more money. So my answer to that is to provide opportunities for people to earn more money with the state taking less of that money, because we know that real estate here is going to be expensive. Provide that through a better business environment. When you earn more money, California becomes more affordable for you.
Okay, I got that. Now let's look at strategy. What is one action that you will take that will implement that? You're a business owner. You've got that background. You know how business works. So what is one strategy that you can implement to assure that?
When we have problems getting permits to build, that includes anybody who wants to move manufacturing here. That includes anybody business who wants to put warehousing here. That includes anybody who wants to have a logistics company here, which comes back to the jobs. We need to effectively reduce red tape. I am not a fan of the California Coastal Commission. I am not a fan of the California Air Resources Board. And I think that if CARB, California Air Resources Board, had an elected official instead of just an appointed one, I think that would help. I think if the California Coastal Commission had an elected official instead of an appointed one, that could help Californians. And by reducing how big state government is and trying to pass some of, as much as possible, of that power back to cities, back to counties, back to your local neighborhood, that can hopefully allow residents in those neighborhoods, whether your neighborhood is Los Angeles, which is a huge neighborhood, or a small neighborhood, Redlands, California, or something like that. When you give them that power back, now they're not fighting the state when they want to do something. And I think that that would help a lot. But we really need to reduce the red tape, because that just makes California a horrible place to do business. And I think that that's why businesses are leaving California.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about that red tape, climate and infrastructure. So wildfires and drought cost California billions of dollars annually, and aging infrastructure exasperates these issues. As governor, let me actually go back. It's exacerbates. Took me a second to get that word out. We've had a lot of talking tonight. Exacerbate these issues as governor. How will you prioritize climate resilience and infrastructure upgrades? And what funding mechanisms beyond federal aid? We don't need the federal aid. So what funding mechanisms will you use to avoid passing costs onto we the people, the taxpayer, already facing high utility bills? My bill last month was $400. The same thing the month before. Ridiculous amount in San Diego. So what can you do? What will you do?
That if I were elected, when we allow competition in California, and I really like what Daniel Mercury said, who was just on before me, when he talked about why would California not allow outside state insurance companies to insure people here? Because it's money. It's a financial transaction. And if we don't allow that, then we have California, you can only buy your power from a certain place. You can only buy your water from a certain place. And then that creates artificial monopolies. And I think that with deregulating those things, that allows the free market to do what it does. Now, I want you to repeat that part of your question again, because there was a lot in there.
Sure. How will you prioritize climate resilience and infrastructure upgrades? Okay. And what funding mechanisms beyond federal aid will you use?
I want California to be more financially independent so that we're not dependent upon FEMA when bad things happen here. With, for example, high-speed rail, we lost insane amounts of money with that. That is a misuse, in my opinion, of California taxpayer dollars. So a lot of it is about correct allocation of taxpayer dollars, rather than them going to bloated bureaucracies and secretary's assistant secretary, who's the secretary to the secretary of whatever. That's not necessary. They need a secretary, sure. But when we more effectively use California taxpayer dollars to help Californians rather than helping somebody that somebody owes a political favor to, or nepotism where they're helping out their nephews or their nieces, their cousins, family members, stuff like that, I think the money that is now available for being used, what Californians actually gave it to the state to be used for, now that money is available. If money's not being used correctly, you can't put enough money into that. It will never, ever be enough because people will just start handing more of that money to their friends. And then when you're driving down the road and it's beating your car up and beating you up, you'll be the one that's paying for those repairs on your car. So you're paying twice. You're paying extra repairs on your car and you paid in taxes, plus you paid in gas taxes. And so I think it's about correct allocation of funds.
I got that. Correct allocation of funds. Gabby, what personal calling drives you to lead California back to greatness?
If I were elected, it's less about me and more about the people, because it has to be a group effort. And in order for it to be a group effort, we have to reach consensus. And the word compromise is something that I heard a lot in the earlier interviews. I work with people to try to come to mutual agreements. You cannot make business deals and agreements without compromise. You have to be willing to compromise. And I think that make California being great again has to do with that compromise. Can you repeat part of that question again?
Sure. With President Trump leading the nation, how will you align California with his America First vision? No, I'm sorry. Forgive me. I just jumped over a question I was going to ask you next. Let's go back. Rewind. Rewind. Okay. What personal calling drives you to lead California back to greatness?
Okay.
What is that internal drive for you?
Yes. Yes. I addressed the second part of the question first. Now I'll address the first one. At around age 27, I felt like I had the skill set and the calling to serve in political office somehow, somewhere. And that is why I went to school. And that's why I have the degrees that I have, because you'll notice that with cybersecurity, national security, and business, and my undergraduate degree is in psychology, it's about helping people. So I have been spending the past 15 years, roughly, building my skill set and my tool set for helping people. And I have, in my opinion, zero obligation to win this election, but 100% obligation, which I feel called by God to make myself available if Californians want my help. And if they don't, I love being a contractor, and I'm still helping people by being a contractor. But my goal in life is to help as many people as I possibly can. And if I were a dentist, I would want to be a great dentist. If I were whatever, an accountant, I'd want to be a great accountant. But God has blessed me with the ability to lead, manage, orchestrate, have productive conversations with people, find mutual agreement, and work on that, get that accomplished, and move on to the next thing. And so I feel like that is the skill set that God blessed me with, and I feel obligated to make myself available.
Okay, got that. And we're going to come back to Trump in a second, but I want to go back to compromise. You mentioned compromise earlier, and that seems to be the theme, right? Compromise, common sense, California. So the question for you is, what are you willing to compromise and what are you unwilling to compromise?
I don't like terrorists. I don't like pedophiles. I don't like drug dealers. I don't like drug cartels. those are some of the things. It's hard for me to find any compromise when dealing with terrorists. I don't know what to, I just try to push as hard as I can. There are others in the question. You said, what am I not willing to compromise? Is that correct?
Yes. What are you unwilling to compromise in your role of California governor?
I think those things, pedophiles, drug dealers, drug cartels, terrorist organizations. Those are the things that
Okay,
I'm
got
going to
it.
push
So
as
when you
hard as
say,
possible to keep people safe.
okay, got it. And so what that means is what exactly? If you're unwilling to compromise, I hear you don't like them. What does that mean by action? What will you do?
It means that if I have the ability by executive order to stop a terrorist organization that is a threat to California security, a threat to families and children and homes, I will sign whatever that is. And if people don't want to reelect me, fine. I did my job. I am not interested in coddling pedophiles. That is infinitely unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. No compromise on that. We're not going to compromise on that to the best of my ability. Any power that is vested in me by Californians, if they elected me as governor, I will hammer those guys as hard as I possibly can. Those guys, those girls, those men, those women, organizations that in child trafficking, that's another one. No compromise, no exceptions. You don't traffic people in California. No adults, no children, no boys, no women. I don't care what their gender is. No trafficking, no human trafficking in California. No compromise on that.
Okay, I got that. I got that. There's a question that I have here. Let me scroll through my questions because it was very specific to this topic. And I don't want to overlook this. Give me 1 second. All right, here we go. So we touched on the things you're willing to compromise and the things that you are unwilling to compromise. Now let's navigate through the social issues, voter appeal. California voters lean very progressive on issues like abortion access and LGBTQ and rights. Yeah, you are running as a Republican. So how will you address these social issues to avoid alienating the state's Democratic majority? Because I hear that you are very inclusive. I'm hearing that from your language. And what specific policies will you push to show that you can govern inclusively, yet not compromise your principles?
I believe that it's a fool's errand to try to legislate morality. It's not possible. It's a fool's errand. You're just going to annoy people by doing that. That being said, in the context of LGBTQ+, parents have every right to know everything that's happening with their children. And I don't want anybody indoctrinating their children under any circumstances. If they want to do that in college and the person's an adult, they can either buy into that or they cannot buy into that. But when we're talking about kids, they need to be left alone. That being said, if there is, somebody could say, well, if you're against abortion, that would be legislating morality. And I guess in that context, that is something where, to me, in my opinion, and I'm not trying to put down anybody who's had an abortion. There's women that have had abortions and man, it's hard for them. They regret it. But in my opinion, an abortion is a murder. That is my opinion. But we are a nation of laws. We are a state of laws. And we have to abide by those things. But my policy is leave kids alone. in terms of those morality things. If you want to live as an adult, an LGBTQ lifestyle plus, if you're doing that as an adult, that's on you. That's you doing that. That's not me doing that. And so I protect your right to do that because I don't believe in legislating morality. Does that answer the question? Oh, you
Yes,
also
that
mentioned,
answers the question. Excellent
sorry,
job. So
you mentioned one thing I want to touch on.
no, go on.
I have no, I wear a purple
Yes.
tie on purpose. It's my goal for California to be purple and stay
Sure.
purple, not purple on its way to red. When we get one party rule, things get weird. I want to work with everybody. If I were elected, my goal would be to have a dual party, and I realize there's Green Party, Independent Party, and these other things, but a multi-party administration wherein blue Democrats that have a centrist lean toward them are at all of the decision-making tables. And I think that we would get better decisions that way because they think about things that I wouldn't think about. And if the administration was deep red, ruby red, I think we'd be missing out on a lot of valuable insights and a lot of valuable information because I've met some centrist Democrats. I've talked to them. They've reached out to me and they're willing to work with me. And I recognize that if whoever is elected governor, they're the governor of the entire state and everybody who lives in that state, regardless of whether they agree with that person's policies. They are responsible for honoring and respecting everybody's opinions, the opinions of all voters. And I think that's really, really important for people to understand about me, that I recognize and respect and want to treat with honor people who disagree with me totally. And I want to treat them respectfully.
Thank you, Kobe. I got that. Kobe, you run for any political position ever?
Yes. In Texas, I ran for mayor of Commerce, Texas. And I think I did 28% of the vote. And I'm thankful that I did not get that job because, and this is way back, 14 years ago. If I had not done that, I would have not pursued my education at Southern Methodist University. And that was a really, really, really good move for me. And so it was a blessing that I did not get that position. That is the only political office that I've ever run for.
Okay. Have you ever served in any local city, county office position?
I have not. I was an intern at the Trump administration during his the first time that he was there. And I've also worked as an intern for Texas Congressman Pete Sessions. I was an intern for him at his office, which was previously in Dallas. He's since relocated in Texas. And then I also worked for him as an intern on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. And I think that's the extent of my government experience.
Okay. So let me ask you this, because I know this is on the mind of our viewers and listeners right now. You have a wealth of experience when it comes to your schooling, your education, tons of experience. You've got a generous amount of experience as a business owner, like boots on the ground. What gives you the qualification to run the state of California, deal with the bureaucracy, and be able to give the voice back to the people? Like, what equips you for that?
Wonderful questions. In order to have an effective conversation with somebody, for example, about budget and accounting, you need to have a basic understanding of accounting. If you're going to have a conversation with law enforcement, you need to have a basic understanding that goes above and beyond just a common person on the street knowledge of what their goal is and what their mission is, and understanding what the challenges are that they are facing. And people will tell you that when you go to school, it's not what you learn in the books that you memorize and apply later. That would be rote memorization. That's not very useful. What it does is it gives you frameworks for decision making so that you know what questions to ask. And when I'm in meetings, and I know this from feedback from people, I ask questions that they, one, really appreciate, and two, they tell me they never thought of that before, whether it was looking at that situation from that angle or proposing a potential solution. And my ability to navigate situations where there's a lot of uncertainty, I can find metrics, and I learned this in my psychology degree, to find something that seems to possibly be immeasurable and make it measurable. Then when you make it measurable, then you start tracking it. Once you start tracking it, then you start modifying policies, modifying who's over that department, who is not in that department and doesn't belong in that department. And you start tracking things. And when you start tracking things and measuring things, whether it's individual performance, the performance of that office as a state office, sometimes people who were not performing at 100% effort, they start to perform because now they know that their performance is measurable and that it is being measured. And if they don't want to perform, well, then they can find employment elsewhere. But I think to answer your question, one of the main things that it does is it gives you frameworks for analyzing ambiguous situations. Where did the money go? That's financially ambiguous. I have some basic training in forensic accounting. Ambiguous situations, cybersecurity. How do you start collecting data? How do you start measuring that data? How do you know what your benchmarks are? And that is, with all the ambiguity in California, I think it's really important to have that skill set where you can come into a situation, not know who's doing what or when or why or what their political motives are, and start nailing those things down and put this in this box. This goes here. This goes here. Now we, and by we, I mean all the voters locally within their areas, I can explain to him, here's what this office has been doing. Here's what they should have been doing. Here is what they've been tasked with to start doing their job. And here is how we want to get them from A to B so that they are serving you as the individual voter. Because when you don't track things, people will try to get away with all kinds of stuff that they should not be doing. So I think that if I could explain it in a few sentences as I did, it's about that, being able to come into an ambiguous situation, categorize it, create a framework for it, create a mission. Here's where we are today, and here's what we need to do to get from A to B, from B to C, and from C to D.
Excellent. Excellent. Kobe, our final question today before we close up. What question did I not ask today that you would have loved for me to ask?
I don't have one.
Oh, come on, Kobe. Make it up.
There's nothing that I was hoping that you would ask me. The only thing that I would like to do before we close is to have a prayer for California.
I love that.
And for Californians as they're navigating these waters of all these different candidates for this race and the other political race and navigating fire recovery. There's so much that Californians need help with. And I respect the fact that some people may not want to pray with us, but I think that there are people who would like to pray with us. And that's the only thing that I would just like to lead us in a prayer for, and all the listeners, just in general for California.
Yes, I love that, Kobe Markham. So, Kobe, before you lead us in prayer, why don't you tell us where people can follow you and reach you?
I'm on the X platform, formerly known as Twitter, Kobe J. Markham, and I am available online. You can find my website at kobejmarkham.com. And I welcome opportunities to engage with people on X, because I talk to a lot of people there, and people who follow me there will tell you I do answer questions. I will answer questions, and I encourage and welcome those questions.
Excellent, Kobe. Excellent. That's kobejmarkham.com. kobejmarkham.com. Go to his website. Go check him out. He is always updating that. So that's kobejmarkham.com. And Kobe, before you lead us into prayer, which I'm really excited about, it's probably one of my favorite parts, is to pray together for our great Golden State. I would love to personally invite you to our November 1st Take Your Power Back California Governor Face-Off Showdown in person with all those running for governor. Will you join us in Carlsbad, California?
Lord willing, I will do everything in my power to be there. I would absolutely, positively love to be there, not for myself, but for Californians, to let them know what ideas are out there so that they can make decisions for themselves. So yes, I would love that opportunity to serve.
Excellent. We would be honored to have you there. Kobe, would you close us? We're not going to close out yet, but close this segment in prayer.
Yes. Dear Father, we come before you humbly, thanking you above all for your son, Jesus. We thank you for blessing us with living in a country and a state where we can come to you freely, and where we do not have to hide from our government, where we do not have to hide our faith from our government. And California has been in a lot of financial, emotional, psychological, and political pain recently. And I just pray for us as voters of all faiths to make wise decisions. I humbly ask that you would please guide us in making these decisions to help California and to do the things that are right for California children and right for California families, regardless of who the candidate is, regardless of the political office, whether it's local or state, wherever it may be. And also just in our personal lives, that we would make wise decisions that help California recover. I humbly ask that you would please bless California with recovery by any and all means as you see fit. I humbly ask for your forgiveness of our many sins through your son's blood. Mm-hmm. And I humbly ask that you would please help us, if it be your will, that we would seek you, because you have the answers. And government does not have the answer. They are just your servants there to facilitate. I ask all of these things, and I ask for your blessings upon the state of California and everybody in California and everybody who does business here and travels here and anybody associated with California, that you would please bless us, if it be your will. In your son, Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen, amen, amen. The scripture that's coming to mind is seek his kingdom first and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you. God desires to bless us. God says, I will give you, seek me with all your heart. I will give you the desires of your heart. He knows our desires, and he knows the heart of those that live here in this state and truly are desiring that golden state, that is in integrity, that is in a godly leadership, a leadership that is led by really we the people. And that is so
Yes.
key. Kobe, thank you so much. Kobe Markham, a blessing having you here today. Godspeed, my brother from another mother and same father. I just pray that you go forth and that your campaign is blessed. And I am excited to see you on the other side.
Amen. Thank you so much for
Come
having me as a
on.
guest on here. And we had a lot of very serious questions. And I'm not always this serious. I like to joke around a lot, but I realize that you're recognizing.
I've met you in person. It's true.
Yes.
You have a great
we
smile,
have
by the way. Great smile.
so many,
Kobe.
so many serious things happening in California that you have to joke around a little bit to be able to
Yeah.
survive and be able to go to sleep at
Come
night.
Come on.
But I just want everybody to know that I care about you and I love you. I truly do. And I thank you for this opportunity to share ideas with you. And let's start
Come
winning
on,
together.
Kobe Markham in the house. Kobe, thank you so much for being with us tonight. What a blessing. Godspeed. What an incredible show today, guys. I'm really blown away. This has been a game changer. We got some incredible insight tonight, and I think that this is probably one of the most important things we can be doing right now with our time. Our window is short. It really is. And we don't want to be in a position where we're calling our friends and our family, hey, who are you voting for? Who are you voting for? What do they believe in? Let's get our facts. Let's get to know these candidates. Patriots, this is just the beginning of our fight. Let's get ready for the Take Your Power Back California Governor Face-Off Round 3. We're not stopping here. We've got Round 3 on June 12th, Round 4 on July 17th, Round 5 on August 21st. We will publicize all of these dates and the ultimate Take Your Power Back Governor Face-Off Showdown. That's right. On November 1st in Carlsbad, California. You're going to want to get your tickets to that. We'll have that information up soon. It will be a real showdown and it's going to be absolutely powerful. So stay tuned for those details on how you can join us in person to keep the fire of freedom burning. And a massive thank you to every single one of you, to our listeners, that you guys, you showed up today. You really showed up. Thank you for doing that. And thank you for sticking with us to the very end. And a massive thank you to our streamers today, to Chula Vista Live Data, San Diego Data Live, Eye of the Storm, the Patriot Pulse podcast, the Live Data Organization, Patriot Mom 007, Q News Patriot, Golden Age Show, and a big thank you to our sponsors today and to the Take Your Power Back Show team who keep freedom alive. Your support fuels this movement. I want you guys to share and like and follow us at the takeyourpowerbackshow.com. You can click onto our Rumble there. You'll have access to all of our shows. And find us on X at Real Kim Yater. You can find us on Instagram at the Take Your Power Back Show, as well as on Facebook at Kimberly Yater and at the Take Your Power Back Show. And when you get this information out to everybody, when you're sharing this stream, you're liking it, you're subscribing, I want you to hashtag some key hashtags in this movement. Hashtag California Governor Face Off, hashtag Take Your Power Back CA, and hashtag Take Our California Back, and spread the words. And remember the scripture in God's word, just like we mentioned earlier, to seek his kingdom first and his righteousness, and all these things will be given. And remember to stand firm, to let nothing move you, and to always, that is always, regardless of what's happening, to give yourself fully to the work of the Lord, because your work of the Lord is not in vain. And remember this, that he who began a good work in you and in me and in our great country, America. We'll continue it on to the very end until the time of Jesus Christ. And we've got to get ourselves back aligned and get this country aligned with God first. That's how we take America back. So together, we are going to take California back. It has been an honor being with you tonight, and may God bless you abundantly. This is Kim Yater signing out. Step into your God-given power, patriots, and take your power back. I love you. God bless you. And some of you are hopping over to the X Spaces. Some of you are jumping into conversations right now. My encouragement is keep this conversation alive. I'll see you very soon in round 3 of Take Your Power Back California Governor Face Off. God bless.
Thank you for joining us for the Take Your Power Back show. As Peak Performance Breakthrough Coach Kim Yater speaks to other freedom-loving Americans that are making a positive impact in the world by standing in truth amid adversity. Listen in weekly and learn how to take your power back in your freedom, in your personal and professional life, in technology and creativity, and in your faith. Be encouraged, be inspired, be transformed as you step into your power and take action in your leadership and allow your voice to be heard. Together, let's take your power back. To sponsor and support the Take Your Power Back show, go to takeyourpowerbackshow.com. That's takeyourpowerbackshow.com and take your power back.